SummerSlam 2022 is this Saturday, the 30th of July. The predictions are already out on the channel, but I thought this was a great opportunity to do a live Q&A. So if you want to get involved with any questions, any comments, any takes on anything going into the biggest show of the summer, then feel free to get yourselves involved. And I tell you what, I'm not alone for the live stream. I've got a very special guest with me. You can catch in for watch-alongs, whether it's a Friday night SmackDown or a premium live event. But if you can't wait for that, then usually on a Monday and a Friday, 10 p.m. on UK time, 5 p.m. Eastern, this man hosts Spoiler Warning. Personally, if you ask me, I think we're just being spoiled. It's the one and only Mr. Tom Colohue here on the channel. Tom, how are you doing?
Doing very, very well, thank you. It's been a very good time to be Tom Colohue over the last few months. I tell you that, and I'm excited to be back on the channel and answering some questions and just having a bit of fun with it.
Your channel has skyrocketed since the last time you were with us. I think like you've gone almost probably about, probably since how long it's been since I've had you on. I should have tried sooner, but I think you must have gained nearly 1,000, maybe at least between 700-800 subscribers since the last time you were here.
Starting January, we've basically doubled our number since then. We're now at a new all-time record of about 1,300, and some of the numbers we're getting in the shows are absolutely mind-blowing at the moment. I give a lot of credit to the regulars there, including yourself, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you've got a great audience that comes and checks out your streams, a lot of Q&A format as well. But usually you're renowned for a lot of your inside knowledge as well, which is why it's great for being able to get the questions in for you here today. But of course, like I say, with some of the stuff that you've probably done, that you've broke first, obviously ahead of some of the other big major dirt sheets, maybe you can share a couple of those stories so people can see what they're dealing with here.
I'll certainly try, but I do have to give a little bit of warning. Spoiler warning is tomorrow, and I need to save something in the back pocket.
Of course, yes. No, I mean, like, but some of your previous stories, obviously last year at SummerSlam, you broke with Becky Lynch, obviously, at the time, the Royal Rumble, Ronda Rousey. Those stuff was broke by you before we saw on any other dirt sheet.
Absolutely. Becky Lynch, I believe I'm the only one who actually reported that one. It was the day before I was able to report it because of all the changes going on at the time. And when it comes to Ronda Rousey, I believe it was 3 days before it hit anywhere else. One of the reasons the numbers have been going so high recently is big news like that people can go back and watch at any time just to go through it, see what was there first, and really enjoy that sort of content.
Absolutely, indeed. Yeah, I do recommend everyone to highly go and check it out. We're going to go into our chat because a few people already get themselves involved. At Tino's time in here, let's go. We are indeed. We're going to go ready, set, in fact. And we've got Ed Fry's in the house as well, one of your moderators here. Hi, Steve, and Mr. Colohue, I think is what we've got here. There must be an
That is exactly what it is. He's trying to make me do a cooking stream. It's not going to work, but he's trying.
What's your favourite sort of meal there? Just to please, Ed, very quickly. What would be your average sort of go-to?
My favorite food, and I'm very, very much enjoying that I can make it now. It was always my mother's macaroni cheese. Now, since then, I've come on a little bit. I eat a lot of Mexican food, but I've still got a soft spot for the macaroni cheese.
Can't blame it indeed. See, Ed, we've got you just what you wanted there. Only on a Q&A can you get that sort of content there for anyone else. Nuben Co in the house as well, saying hello, Tom and Steve. How are you doing? We are doing very well. Thank you for joining us as well. And well, let's go with our first question. I've got a few questions I'd like to dive in with myself during this, but I'm going to start here with Tino's time. In your opinion, what's more likely to happen? Theory cashes in during Money in the Bank while both guys are laid out, or wait till it's over and then tries to? Tom, what's your take with Theory potentially cashing in Money in the Bank this Saturday?
Well, if you'll forgive the pun, my theory is that he's going to sit at ringside with the briefcase, sort of teasing the idea that he will cash in, but at some point over the course of the match, he's going to be put through the table by Brock and then put through something else by Roman and just so on and so forth. Just really get the crap kicked out of him at a fairly regular basis so that he's not able to cash in. Now, you give me two options there, Tino's time, so I'm going to pick which one of those I think is more likely, the cash in. I'm confident that we're going to see these championships split up, though I will say I have been for a while now. First mentioned that after Wrestlemania, and I've been sort of waiting for it to happen since. What better way to do that than to have him cash in during the match and have Brock and Roman standing tall at the end of it with a whole lot to work out by the end of it?
That's a really good philosophy because obviously if those are the two, it's a last man standing element. Obviously, if Theory cashes in during the match, it's still a last man standing match. The rules still apply. It doesn't become a 1, 2, 3. If anything, it actually would be more of an advantage for Theory to actually cash in after the match has taken place because he needs to get a free count unless both guys are already completely laid out.
Absolutely. That seems the easiest way to do it, but obviously you still have to factor in the other person. When it comes to Roman, you have to factor in the Usos unless they get taken out early in the night. There's a lot of moving parts, and my dream scenario is similar to WrestleMania 2000, when we had 3 people in a match, 2 falls in a triple threat, one for the European Championship, one for the Intercontinental. I would love it. I don't think we're going to get it, but I'd love it all the same.
I do. I have fond memories of that match there. Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, and Chris Benoit. Absolutely fantastic triple threat. Probably my favourite match alongside the ladder match with the EC, Hardys, and Dudley Boys, of course, back from that WrestleMania. Great throwback to that mention there. But we've got Anthony in the house as well. Anthony, hope you're doing well. Stephen and Tom, as fans, when can we see the actual legitimate effects of Triple H taking over creative? Do we have to wait a few weeks after SummerSlam before we see major changes? Tom, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Triple H definitely is interested in making changes sooner rather than later. He's been excited and had ideas for this for a long time, has been sat on the sidelines, essentially while waiting to do so. He's always had his eye on NXT, that's been his baby, but the main roster's right there for the taking. It has been for a while, and he has ideas that he wants to bring in. I think we're already seeing at least a small immediate effect when it comes to Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle at the moment. When it comes to wholesale changes, the actual legitimate effects, as you mentioned there, Anthony, the idea that I've got in my head, and from what I can tell with the people I'm speaking to, is that we're going to see the first real sign of big changes around the time of the draft. So right after SummerSlam, we have a UK tour. Shortly after that, we're looking at a Saudi Arabia tour. There's a lot going on, just a hell of a lot going on that's going to make it difficult for those wholesale changes. But once we get that draft, Triple H gets to rip up the script, really set his own vision out. And I do think that will be the ideal time to do so. And that is when it will happen.
Absolutely, I would agree 100%. In fact, I've got a couple of questions then linked with that. Obviously, you mentioned the draft there first off. And for me personally, I would say the draft makes a lot of sense because, like you say, everything begins again with a draft. You know, Raw and SmackDown superstars change, and we say it all begins again. Roman will still be on SmackDown most likely, but still, you have these idea of fresh challengers, new people around, and you have this like idea of, like you say, everything's sort of closed off from what's happened before. When you've got this UK pay-per-view, I'm sure plans have been in motion. Obviously, Drew McIntyre called his shot, by the way, for that championship match months ago. So the fact that we're getting, hopefully, Drew, probably, I think, more likely against Roman at that show seems to make the most logical sense to myself personally. I think that it does add up that the draft will be the best place for those major changes. But you mentioned there the idea of Seth Rollins and Riddle. Of course, it was mentioned yesterday that Riddle has been pulled due to an injury after Monday Night Raw. This is why the match has been postponed at SummerSlam. My initial first take of this was that perhaps maybe this has been postponed to Clash of the Castle. I like the fact that the postponements happened. A beatdown like Riddle suffered on Raw, it's great for long-time storytelling, because if Riddle just gets up and is fine by the premium live event, you know, what have you got to do to make someone be out of action for a lengthy spell? Which I think here, if Riddle misses 2-3 weeks of TV after that beatdown, it really sells it. It makes Seth look stronger, despite the fact it's probably disappointing these two don't have a match at SummerSlam. My question for you, based on that then, Tom, is pretty much, what's the situation? Is it being postponed, or is Riddle legitimately injured? And what's going to be the case with Seth now going into SummerSlam?
So Riddle is not legitimately injured. It is being postponed with a view to happening later, though that isn't guaranteed at this point in time. There was quite a significant disappointment over the plans for the match. It was a late addition by Vince, but neither of these men can really afford a loss right now. And it seemed as though Seth was the one who's going to be taking it. Seth Rollins obviously has not won a match in quite a long time. So that was part of the thinking, but also additionally, it's just a case of a bit of a refresh, a bit of a walk away, evolving Seth Rollins' character a little more because they're heading him in a slightly different direction. Now, there's lots of different ways you can take this, but when it comes to this different direction, I'm quite excited for what possible different directions we could have. While I do think this is the best Seth Rollins we've ever seen, his ability to evolve in that almost Chris Jericho style is what's got him here. Yeah. So whatever comes next, I'm confident will be very good too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, Seth has sort of put himself on a level right now. Even with all the losses he's had this year, it's not hurt him at any level. He lost 3 straight to Cody Rhodes, and yet he's still seen as the favourite of going into Money in the Bank. Obviously, it didn't work out that way in the end, but he still seems to be one of the top guys on Monday nights despite all those losses. A lot of people have been speculating that what Seth will have instead. Obviously, Seth put out the tweet yesterday about how he'd worked hard for 6 months to get this spot. Unfortunately, not always to be. He said, you know, keep singing my song. They'll hear you eventually. Triple H replied to the tweet, I hear ya. It feels Twitter's gone into a bit of overdrive and excitement. The idea of potentially this could be Seth Rollins' new gimmick. Who is the mystery opponent at a Big 4 event? We had it with Cody at WrestleMania. Will there something be like that here at SummerSlam, or is Seth simply off the show, more time given to other matches, or a replacement match we put on the show this coming Friday on SmackDown?
So there isn't really much planned for replacement matches that weren't already on the card. The match, when it comes to Seth and Riddle, is off the card. When it comes to Seth himself, I know there's a lot of excitement about the idea of Johnny Gargano being involved. Now, personally, I haven't heard anything about that, but I know there's a lot of excitement online. Triple H does have the power to reach out to those people. However, I do want to make it clear, Triple H does not have final say in any of this. Nick Khan would have to approve a signing like that, and Nick Khan right now is not in the business of signing anyone new. It looks like Seth Rollins may be off the card for now.
Interesting stuff indeed there. And obviously, just a couple of other names that have been flying around on Twitter as well. I mean, you probably answer this on a very regular basis, so I imagine you probably bored of these couple of questions. But first name it's been given to me that I should mention is Randy Orton, the possibility. He seems to be out long-term injured, though, from what my understanding is.
He is out injured for a while yet. He's looking to be back at the end of this year, the beginning of next. He was the original plan to take on Roman Reigns in the main event, and I've got to say the whole show feels a little bit worse without him.
Absolutely. The other name that you'll probably definitely be fed up with is Wyndham, aka Bray Wyatt.
I definitely thought I'd hear a different name there, but Bray Wyatt is a name I hear a lot of. No plans at the moment to bring him back. No real interest from Bray Wyatt, to my knowledge. And when it comes to the amount it will cost, Nick Khan is unlikely to be signing it off.
Absolutely. Last question in on this then. What name was you expecting?
Sasha Banks.
All right.
When you say questions that I get asked, every time I start a spoiler warning, I have at least 4 questions. Any update on Sasha Banks?
It was coming from me later in the stream, Tom. I would never have disappointed you. Martin Carrera in the house says, what's up, guys? All the wrestling news for the last couple of months has been crazy. Yes, wrestling news has been drunk of late, Tom. Would you agree?
I completely agree. Everything is happening at once. It's been a hell of a year.
It certainly has, but it's great for content creators. They've got a lot to talk about, so that obviously is good for us.
Yeah, Friday after Vince McMahon retired, in air quotes, was my most successful show ever.
Absolutely. I actually couldn't do a show on that Friday, did a show on the Saturday, and still had my best video for quite a long time. So that just goes to show how how big it is. And it still feels like more news is probably still coming out. I've seen with Wrestle Talk this week, they were mentioning as well. I think even today there may have been something there about, dare I say it, about I don't know what the right word for it is, but let's just say perhaps not so pleasant backstage.
All I will say in this regard is that Vince McMahon jumped before he was pushed, and we will be hearing a lot more about it in the near future.
That's a little tease for you. Martin, they're saying then, so is this year's wrestling news truly going to be remembered as a new and different era of wrestling? Very good question, this one. Will we look back and say the PG era is really different? Rumors of TV14 coming in. Could that affect SummerSlam in any way? It was rumored at one point, or it was listed on Peacock at one point as TV14, although my understanding is it's now moved back to PG.
It has. The initial plan for TV14 seemed like a bit of a dead cat from Vince McMahon at the time to try and distract attention. The plan was essentially, from my best understanding, to have Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar go to war to try and make their match stand out and still satisfy, and to try and keep the crowd from going nuts at it. If you remember back to WrestleMania 34, there were tables, there was a lot of blood. That was the plan here. To my knowledge, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, not the biggest fans of TV14. Curiously, Triple H, not the big fan of Attitude Era style wrestling. Who would have thought that? But when it comes to the new era, this is a new era. A wrestling world without Vince McMahon is a ridiculous concept to so many. My entire life, wrestling has been led by Vince McMahon. It was very strange last weekend, just gone, to wake up knowing that Vince McMahon was not in charge of wrestling for the first day of my life. This is a new era. This is an era that's going to be led by companies like AEW, Triple H in the WWE sphere. It's going to be opportunities for a hell of a lot more companies as well that are going to be jumping in and taking their opportunity, as it were. There's good times coming for wrestling and different times as well.
Hopefully, and hopefully the superstars as well. Perhaps people that have not had so much of a look in as of late, maybe get new, fresh opportunities. Obviously, Triple H pushed a lot of the superstars we see now on Raw and SmackDown in NXT as strong, undefeated superstars for a lengthy period of time. I think of someone like a Shayna Baszler, for example, someone like an Asuka. Asuka's not had a bad one of late, to be fair, though. But you look at other people like Ciampa, who's come to Raw, kind of being the Mrs. Sidekick. We mentioned Johnny Gargano earlier. Would that be someone that could, if was given the green light by Nick Khan to come in, could we get like a reformation of someone like a DIY? It's so much exciting possibilities that can come from this. We'll have to wait and see what will lead to. But I do agree with Tom. I think we've got something definitely new, a different era coming into wrestling. I think it's one that I think our fans are going to be quite happy with in general.
Hopefully so. I mean, this is the era we live in. Hopefully this one's a bit more satisfying than the last one for many people.
Absolutely. Just before we go to any more questions, I've got one further question I'd like to ask Tom earlier on in the stream before I forget it, because jog the old memory otherwise. I would like to ask you quickly about the idea potentially of returns at SummerSlam. Obviously, we've had the recent addition of Rey Mysterio and Dominic, the Mysterios, going against Judgment Day in a no DQ match. Is there a possibility that Edge could return during this match as he wasn't in Madison Square Garden on Raw?
Edge was booked to be working alongside Beth Phoenix against Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley going forward. We'll see if that actually plays out because of the injury to Rhea Ripley. They are not entirely confident of how they're going to use her going forwards, but to my knowledge, she's as clear as you can get really at this point. But when it comes to a head injury, the WWE are always a bit more careful. Now, that was the plan. It is very difficult to say anything about the plan because a lot of the plan has been ripped up. Triple H could make changes here. Now, admittedly, they will lean back on what was already booked and what was already planned just to make sure that they have the consistency. But you've seen characters who maybe don't have much direction, like, for example, Alexa Bliss, make a change in her direction and make that known. When it comes to returns, the only one I know was booked guaranteed for SummerSlam, other than that mention of Edge, is Charlotte Flair. However, once again, we're in a new era now. It's very hard to accurately predict what's going to happen.
Absolutely. That almost answers my next question I was going to ask you with regards to returns. So obviously, I put Bayley in the thumbnail, and obviously Charlotte Flair was another name that has been discussed. Jonesy and myself did the predictions the other day. We both talked about both females. We both said which we felt was more likely. Jonesy went with Bayley. I went with Charlotte Flair. So would you say that of the two of them, Charlotte Flair would be the most likely?
Yes, I absolutely would. It's very difficult at the minute to work out what's going on with Bayley. It was about 2 months ago, at which point I said she's being cleared. She started training again. That hit the bigger news sites, as it were, about a month later. And it's been interesting watching and waiting, just waiting for something. I do believe Liv Morgan, with her current position, has basically kicked Bayley off the spot. But I think it basically guarantees a much more likelihood of Becky versus Bayley.
Interesting. I really want to see that feud. It's one of my must-sees at some point in WWE. We've seen it in NXT, but never on a Raw and SmackDown. Certainly would be something I would love to see. We'll go back to the chat now, and we've got quite a few comments come flying in. Southern Pro Wrestling in the house. Temple is here. First time I'm catching live for a change. Hope you're all doing well. WWE will get better in time. Rome wasn't built in a day, as the saying goes. Yeah, obviously, we hope that we'll probably get a better WWE product over the whole. But with Raw this past week, I thought there was a couple of subtle things I felt watching that show in Madison Square Garden. Maybe it was the fact it was in MSG. Did you feel in yourself that this had some Triple H tweaks in this Raw this past week?
Certainly some elements, but only quite subtle. I've mentioned the Alexa Bliss comment there, the fact that Ciampa was booked, at least in some capacity. I do think there are certain people, such as AJ Styles, who were always going to get a better hand when Triple H was involved. There are certain people who just know how to book people like AJ better. It's why he's always felt like a much bigger deal on SmackDown than he did on Raw. So I feel that was certainly a part of that. You look at the Rey Mysterio thing, that had a bit of a rewrite to it. But ultimately, it's not huge blanket rewrites or anything at this point in time. Absolutely, SP, Rome was not built in a day.
Absolutely not. We'll have to wait and see how it will progress. But I think a lot of us are feeling quite positive about it. Some pro also asking the question, why did WWE book the Unification match at WrestleMania, but the IWC wanted the titles separated?
Great question. A really great question. And it comes down to a lot of what they wanted not coming to fruition. The plan before Roman Reigns got COVID, unfortunately, was to quite simply have Big E lose the championship to Seth Rollins, and then Big E would challenge Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. That was your Royal Rumble winner right there, Big E. For some reason, they changed their mind there. We also had issues with Bobby Lashley. He's been saying for years that he wants the match with Brock Lesnar, and his contract may or may not have been coming up. Having been promised with his previous contract that he'd get the match, and that promise was broken, seems like they made their decision based almost entirely on that. Then we got to the Elimination Chamber, which is when they actually decided to unify the championships, because they could have reverted to default at that point, and they chose not to. So there was a little bit of disappointment backstage at Big E's run, which I feel is a little misplaced. I wouldn't have felt any disappointment myself personally, but we are where we are there. And before you knew it, Vince McMahon was pressing the Brock Lesnar lever, and here we are.
seems to be a very common theme in the last 12 months. The Brock Lesnar button gets pushed and all of a sudden he comes flying back into the title picture. Although I have enjoyed a lot of Brock's run in this recent go. I've enjoyed the babyface elements, but obviously with the stuff that happened on SmackDown this very recent, I think it was last week, wasn't it now? But shows how long this week has felt on the road to SummerSlam. So much been going on. But obviously with I'm going to bring this up. This is slightly controversial, but obviously CM Punk made a mention of this as well. Obviously Brock was walking out of SmackDown last week. He did return. I remember on your live stream, a lot of people was talking about the ideas of, the main event needs to be changed. Stuff like, he was like, calm down, he's not gone far. He could come back.
Yeah, that was my phrasing. He's not gone far.
And obviously he did come back and did come in, but obviously the commentary did make mention of it. But obviously Brock isn't going to get the same heat as like a Sasha Banks and Naomi. I've mentioned Sasha again. I'm very sorry for that for you. But
you don't need to be sorry about that.
At the same time, like, do you think that it's a bit unfair that Brock seems to get no heat from this whatsoever when Sasha and Naomi did get a complete blast on WWE TV?
Honestly, no. I don't put it in a direct comparison on the basis that I think the unfair part was doing that to Sasha Banks and Naomi to begin with. I don't think we can say, oh, well, this person was punished, so this person should be. I don't believe anyone should have been punished. I don't believe that sort of public calling out is a good call and a good look in any way, shape, or form. Sasha Banks and Naomi did not deserve that. Neither of them did. Regardless of their situation, that sort of public shaming is draconian and unnecessary and very Vince McMahon.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I do agree. I don't think anyone should have had it to begin with. I just feel what I would say is what I think a lot of people have said. If it's been done to one, it should be done to the other. But at the same time, as CM Punk said, the ladies actually had much more strength than anyone else in the company to actually get up and do something about it if they weren't happy. So, we'll have to wait and see. We never know. We may still talk more about CM Punk in a WWE live stream. We'll have to wait and see. It wouldn't be the first time, would it? Sure. Southern Pro Wrestling saying, get Ciampa far away from The Miz, please. We'll have to wait and see if Triple H will do that in very, very soon. But in the meantime, Martin asking, also, aside of all the NXT Black and Gold talent still in WWE, who else can change of scenery on the main roster? Interesting question there, Tom.
I'd be leaning towards names such as Mustafa Ali. People who are great on the mic who just never seems to get the opportunities. I
would agree with that. I think that Mustafa, I used to love his run in 205 Live. Like, it was one of the main reasons I would watch that show in 2018. It was a really good time to watch, and he always had a great promo. Always would sit on the streets as well of Chicago. Have the passionate sport. He'd have his, his street fights and stuff like that. I always used to love that stuff. So Mustafa Ali, there's a lot of potential. It's a shame it didn't work out with him with the stuff that he had with Retribution, of course, going a couple of years ago.
True.
Anthony, with our next question for us now. Tom, can you see Triple H trying to bring Gallus from NXT UK and calling up Alba Fire and pairing them with Drew?
I cannot see that. There are still a little bit of issues around Gallus, not necessarily proven issues, but certainly accusations that were made about certain members during the Speaking Out movement. And that's made people a little more careful in the WWE. Now, as I say, there's been nothing proven to my knowledge as regards that. If there was, he would have, the people in question certainly would have left the company. However, what I will say first and foremost, Triple H has never been a fan of that sort of nationalist faction, because from what I can tell, that's either UK or just Scottish right there. I don't really feel Triple H would be a fan of just putting people together based on that nationality. I don't really feel they fit too well together. Gallus seems to have, even though, they're standard tough guys, I do feel Gallus have enough about them that they don't quite match up with Drew McIntyre. Don't get me wrong, Kaylee Ray, probably, but that would fit the Scottish psychopath rather than the Scottish warrior.
Yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely. And I can't imagine Joe Coffey sort of leading his firm as well to having Drew taking over and being the leader of that gang either, because no way Joe Coffey leads that firm either. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't see it personally as a fit, but you never know. One day, I think, like you say, Kaylee Ray or Alba Fire, she's known at the second, would probably have more of a shout of being caught up at this particular moment. Just to say, if you're enjoying this video, then please do hit the like button, share with a friend, let them know that SCW is here, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Only one sub away from 1,600. So if we could hit that milestone on the stream, that would be awesome. So really appreciate people getting involved with their questions as well, which will go to our next one from more of a statement here from Southern Pro Wrestling. Seth Rollins could go full heel with the amount of losses of him doing anything to win.
I like the current character that he has. The reason that wins and losses don't really faze him is because he doesn't care. Much like when AJ Styles was buried alive and he came back the next month and said, so what? Nobody asked any questions. If you don't care, doesn't matter.
Kind of true. Makes a fair point there. Newman Cove, a question for us now. What was the point of Becky versus Asuka in a no-holds-barred match earlier this month? They should have saved it for SummerSlam, and now I hear that fans are upset about Asuka is wrestling at main events. I guess, Tom, correct me if I would be wrong here, but if the plans ended up being that Becky Lynch was going to be inserted into the Raw Women's Championship match against Bianca Belair, which of course is a rematch from last year's SummerSlam, probably a closing chapter for their rivalry, they needed to find a way to close off the rivalry with Becky and Asuka, and it just felt on this particular occasion that Asuka would be the one to take a fall. What otherwise has been quite a successful feud between them two. There's some really good matches and chemistry throughout that.
Yep, absolutely. This has followed pretty much the exact same formula that every feud between Becky Lynch and Asuka follows. Becky Lynch really enjoys working with Asuka. Asuka really enjoys working with Becky Lynch. And the two women have tried for a while to sort of make sure that they are feuding with each other quite regularly. You always get really good matches. Unfortunately, Becky Lynch is still a cut above Asuka in the reckoning at this point in time. Becky versus Bianca is bigger than Asuka versus Bianca. And when you say that fans are upset about it, Asuka fans definitely will be, but Becky Lynch fans definitely would be upset if it was the other way around. So,
yeah, it usually works in that way. And someone has to wrestle on main event at some point. And if that was on a Madison Square Garden week, perhaps it's better to wrestle in MSG on main event than to not wrestle at all. Should it be better than sitting in catering?
I completely agree.
There we go. Anthony Backwards says, can the Bloodline work as a babyface group? Because it seems that Triple H is slowly turning them into good guys, because in my honest opinion, Paul doesn't work as a babyface manager.
Right. So when you say slowly turning them into good guys, I should point out Triple H has been in charge for 1 day of screen time with the Bloodline. So I'm going to sort of ask you to calm down a little bit on that one. The Bloodline have not been managed by Triple H at any point until the last couple of days. Now, when you say slowly turning them babyface, this has been something done by the crowd for most of it. Do you remember the feud between Roman Reigns and John Cena? The missionary position line?
Yeah.
People love this version of Roman Reigns. That's what's turning them face.
Yeah, obviously, I one of my favorites was the Cesaro one. Obviously, I'm a big Cesaro fan. I enjoyed it, but when he was talking about the main events of like, this is your first pay-per-view main event, it's like, I've done 39 of these, and he just turned to the camera and went, 39, like as if like just completely buried Cesaro. And obviously, I guess where this comes from, this question, where I can perhaps see where Anthony's coming from. Theory at the moment seems to be one taking a lot of the brunt of the attacks right now from Roman Reigns. So obviously, is a detestable heel by a lot of people. When you put that in that environment, I guess people, like you said, people love this Roman Reigns, but they're going to love him even more if he's sort of, throwing out Theory and saying your daddy's not here anymore.
This is a very different kind of Roman Reigns. I wouldn't even say he's necessarily heel. He can work with faces or heels. He just hasn't worked with heels as of yet to sort of protect them as much as anything else. It's very difficult for many people to recover from what Roman Reigns does to them after he basically demolishes them, not just in the ring, but on the microphone as well. But I think the main thing with Roman is that he's not running away. He's not a cowardly heel. And he also doesn't need to cheat. He doesn't need to do any of that. He will just beat you, so he has no reason to be afraid. Austin Theory being in his way doesn't matter. He will stop anyone who's in his way. I wouldn't even necessarily say that he's a heel. You reach a certain level in WWE where they just say, okay, the fans care. Now you're just a character. Now you're just a personality. You are defined, and then whatever the crowd react to, that's what you are.
Yeah, I think they seem to do it quite a lot in the most recent years, especially. So I think that's a great point you make there. Obviously, as well, with Roman just being Roman at this particular point, like say you put him as a Theory, they'll lean more towards Roman. So that's what makes it kind of go that sort of way. And that's my favorite type of heel as well, by the way. Normally, WWE books so many heels that are like cowardly. They have to sort of cheat to win. It ruins the momentum very quickly. I think that's why this Roman Reigns run has been so successful, despite the fact I think more people in recent months have been calling for it to finish where he's not been on TV. But I would just say that's because he's not been on TV. If it's still been around, would people be as bored?
It's a good question, but I think with him having both championships, it is starting to grate a little bit, at least on me personally. I can't speak for the majority of fans, but those that I speak to in my shows are definitely starting to tire of it a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I think when you're not there and you have all the gold, I think you want to see a champion there every week. That's a big part of your show, so I can understand that.
If I may, just before you start in there, it was interesting listening to Drew McIntyre spout the same stuff that Roman was spouting before WrestleMania 34 about needing a champion on the show. Roman was the guy then spouting it. Now he's the guy being spouted about.
There you go. Will it be Drew in 4 years? We'll have to wait and see. That's always a fun way. It seems to always go around in circles, doesn't it? Anthony saying here, besides the schedule, can you see a guy like John Moxley maybe coming back to WWE after his contract finishes in AEW? With the perceived creative freedom he's going to have with Triple H in charge. Interesting question, but I will just give my take very quickly on this one, Tom, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
John Moxley on AEW Dynamite or Fight for the Fallen, whichever you prefer, last night actually said that he can't stand the sports entertainment S word. I could say shit, but yeah, the S word. He actually does the pro wrestling side of things. He actually lives for that rather than what sort of we see. You know, Jericho is meant to be what WWE is all about, and they're building up now that match for in a couple of weeks' time. I have the feeling with John Moxley, obviously now staying in AEW, there was lots of rumors about his contract expiring. He's still there. He must have re-signed, so he's probably had the opportunity to jump once. I would say personally, I can see him staying in AEW for the more than foreseeable future. But Tom, what's your take on this?
Very little interest from John Moxley in returning. Triple H being there does not guarantee him any sort of creative freedom. He will never have the level of creative freedom in WWE, regardless of who's in charge, that he will have in AEW. And I think more than anything, it's about being locked down to one company. He doesn't like that.
Yeah, Moxley seems to have a lot of freedom. Even in AEW, you can do the GCWs and other shows like that. So you can see him bleeding quite a few times a week with the amount of matches he has. So
to be fair, he's also the highest paid member of the AEW roster and has been for some time. He earns twice what Punk earns.
There you go. That's a bit of an inside information for you there. Seven Pro saying, if Triple H is in charge and he's bringing in talents, does he bring in someone like Jonathan Gresham as he's no longer with AEW ROH? And does he sign people that got released in names like Karrion Kross, Dakota Kai, etc.? So you said earlier on about the idea that Nick Khan obviously probably have to have the final say, but if Triple H could get his way, could these be some of the talents that perhaps we could see come to the company?
I'm definitely looking at names like Dakota Kai. And I'm looking at names like Samoa Joe, if that became a possibility. I'm not necessarily looking at Jonathan Gresham because I do believe he's not a name big enough for Triple H to be himself interested. Nick Khan is the one who put together the cost-benefit analysis that resulted in a lot of people being fired. He's the one who put that together. And as the chief financial officer, he's the guy who has to sign off every single contract. Triple H cannot bring anyone in without Nick Khan say so. What I will say, though, is that Triple H doesn't just have the power to say to Nick Khan, hey, can we try and make this work? He also has the power to say to the wrestler, hey, can you take like 10K less? With the idea being that if you take less under Vince McMahon, you'll get a worse run. So I think there's a lot at play there. I don't think he can necessarily bring people in who've been fired already just that easily. But if they'll take maybe a little pay cut, and he can pitch a decent plan that works for Nick Khan, they could come to an agreement.
Interesting. If you could, I mean, you mentioned Dakota Kai there. Who would you like to see back in?
Dakota Kai is my first and foremost when it comes to that. I liked Bray Wyatt, but I don't feel he'll ever get what he's looking for in WWE. So I'd be looking at Dakota Kai. I'd definitely be looking at people like Samoa Joe. And I think beyond that, there aren't too many at this point that I'd look to be bringing back in.
Interesting. I mean, obviously, if there was no object of it, of course, John Moxley would be someone I think would be great to come back in, though I'm sure he would not be
Daniel
interested.
Bryan, Adam Cole would definitely be up on the list as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned Karrion Kross in the question there. I'd love to see that NXT entrance on a Raw and SmackDown actually be presented properly, like he was in NXT. I think that would be quite fun. And Keith Lee, I've got to give a mention to Keith Lee because that man, he's absolutely amazing. I just wish that he got a better rub of the green wherever he was.
I agree with that. Unfortunately, a lot of the names that are being quoted are under contract to AEW, and as such, for years will not be available in any way, shape, or form.
As Tony Khan has quite publicly mentioned this week as well, hasn't he? Saying the Feud.
Fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a hands off.
5 years, some of them. So, yeah, we're going to be waiting quite a while if we want them. Anthony saying, I understand why people felt the promo from Stephanie last Friday was tone deaf, but we need to realize it wasn't for Vince Wrestling. Would still be regional entity instead of the national syndicated. Yeah, sorry, it took me a second to get that word there for you. I totally understand that. Obviously, Vince, he did create the wrestling that we know. We are all going to be very thankful for that side of things. It's just the stories that are coming out that unfortunately tarnish that reputation that he's actually built in such a positive way over the last 40 years of what we've seen on screen.
All I would say is that sometimes people will give us great things and not themselves great people.
I mean, it's a great thing. Great way to put that there. Patrick asking the question here from SummerSlam, is unique sets and ring ropes for every WWE premium live event? So first off, is there a possibility? I'm sure it would with it being Nashville and a stadium show here.
Yes, when it comes to the stadium shows, they do like to make them stand out. SummerSlam is one of those where they do go all out. The gap between WrestleMania and SummerSlam is the point at which they care the least about their product. And you can see that with some of the lower down the card names being pushed. Now we've got Logan Paul, which is one of the main reasons that they're going to be going hard, because they know they're going to get a younger audience and they want to dazzle them with some sparkly lights and some 3D graphics.
Absolutely. And I'm a sucker for a good set. I used to love the old Backlash sets back in the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression. Would you like to see some of those sets return on a more regular basis?
I'd like to see some new sets. I wouldn't necessarily like to see the same sets of that era return, but I really like the NXT In Your House sets and
Beautiful.
the like. Some quite subtle, understated changes that may actually really stood the test of time and made us remember it. I mock the idea that they're trying to give us bright lights and sparkly things to attract a young crowd. And I'm not a young man myself, but bright lights and sparkly things do actually work for me. So I mock myself there.
To be fair, if you're saying that you're not a young man, then I'm in a lot of trouble. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, but Martin Guerrero says, I have thought about this for a while, especially AEW recently, but should wrestling companies take off seasons like other sports, example, football, basketball, to prevent many injuries? It's a great question. I know Wrestle Talk even did this. Pete Quinnell did a video on this on their channel just recently. Haven't had the chance to check it out yet. So, but Tom, what's your take on this? Because I certainly have an opinion on this.
I don't hate the idea of an off season, just a brief break. As I say, their worst period of time is the period between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, but it's very difficult to put together when it comes to TV deals. They would lose an immense amount of money. Not just that, but as I've said earlier, the time between WrestleMania and SummerSlam is when they push lesser known talent. People like Madcap Moss would not get an opportunity if not for the constant cyclical nature of wrestling. What I think should happen is that wrestlers should be moving more and more into the limited date contracts that we see many people such as Randy Orton and AJ Styles working, where essentially they work for 9 months of the year and take 3 months off at a set period of time. Maybe this break, maybe after Survivor Series and returning at Royal Rumble, but breaks would be really valuable. At the moment, there's less live events. I don't feel we need as many live events to feature everyone, especially when you have a brand split.
I completely agree with that. I think that's a great shout there. Like you said, the idea if it's in the contracts there and says, well, people get time off. I know we get annoyed we don't see Roman Reigns every single week right now. And we go, oh, Brock's taking time off. But if all superstars got a little bit of a break here and there, and we knew that, like, right, okay, you get 2 or 3 weeks off here, they'll be off TV. We know they're going to come back, but this happens with every talent. It feels more special when you do see them as well. That used to be like a Wrestling Challenge and Superstars back in the early 90s. You tune in for your 1 hour and you get the Beverly Brothers. You wouldn't see them for a month. Not that the Beverly Brothers were much special, but it felt much a bigger deal when they came back to TV. When you see, maybe we're spoiled and oversaturated, and that's why also some talents perhaps maybe feel, how do I say it, a bit stale, a bit quicker because we see too much of them.
I think a large part of this is panic at the competition as well. Seeing Roman Reigns in the main event week in, week out would be a very big concession to a company like AEW. The reason we had Steve Austin in the main event of every single Monday Night Raw for such a long period wasn't because they wanted to push Steve Austin. It's because you had to have something to make sure you weren't looking at the NWO.
Absolutely, yeah. And how good it turned out as well in the end also. If you're enjoying this video, then please do like, share, and subscribe as well. Great to see so many people involved as well. Get involved in the chat, dropping your questions as well. We will get to them. And of course, it's great to have Tom here with us, giving his takes and insights and everything as well as we're going towards SummerSlam this weekend. Martin, another question. What more accolades do you see Finn Balor accomplishing in a year from now, especially now that Triple H is in control, which is a very key part of this question here, because now Triple H does control the pencil. Could we see a renewed push for Finn Balor?
This is difficult because when it comes to accolades, it's difficult to think of anything in particular that Finn Balor's in a position to actually win. I don't see him winning a Royal Rumble. I don't see him winning a briefcase. I don't necessarily see him winning a championship. If there is a championship I can see him going for, it's the United States Championship again, even though that didn't quite work out last time. I don't see him beating Gunther if he goes to the other side, but I do think we'll get some great feuds. And I think that's the main difference that we're going to see. It's difficult sometimes to measure certain accolades. There's only so many championships, and honestly, there's too many. And quite a lot of the time you see people thrown into tag team divisions when it doesn't really work. I think the best thing we could see from Finn Balor is just some great feuds, because I like Judgment Day. I think Edge put something very good together, and I think Finn Balor could really benefit from it. What I'd like is great feuds and great matches.
Absolutely. Put some great storytelling. There's a lot of mileage you can do with Judgment Day. There are a great group, like you say. It's just, it feels like they've kind of just fallen off the radar a little bit since Edge was taken off TV. It's been away for a while. We look forward to that return. Hopefully it will be at SummerSlam, just to link it to the SummerSlam theme. And we'll see how it goes down. But yeah, Finn Balor for me, a top talent. Maybe King of the Ring could be something if we do that at Crown Jewel again this year.
Possible, but it looks like it looks like King of the Ring will not be happening this year.
Interesting. There we go. Another little inside take there for us. Also, we've got Southern Pro Wrestling. More a bit of fantasy booking here. Sasha Banks and Naomi, still the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, walk into AEW with them. The Outsiders 2.0 style.
The Outsiders were sued pretty heavily by the WWF at the time, to the point that they had to go on WCW TV and denounce any idea that they were still working with the WWF at the time. You just try with Sasha and Naomi, because I guarantee you, even though he's not currently at the helm of anything, Vince would make millions from that AEW storyline.
There we go. It hurts, but it would have been so much fun. Spoiling it, Vince. Patrick is saying, is there any chance we get red ropes for SummerSlam?
Not impossible, but not likely at this point in time.
Absolutely. And it's going to be same for Clash of the Castle with blue ring ropes.
More likely to be red there, but it's also a possibility, as it's in Wales, it'll be green. The WWE associate UK colours as red because the biggest country in the UK is England.
There we go. And I agree with that as well. And I'd like them to be green, like you said there with the Clash of the Castle theme there for Wales, but we'll see how we go. Tom, especially for you, since you're here, is there any internal thoughts or plans on changing on some things from the current NXT 2.0?
Triple H would like that. However, this is not up to Triple H. Nick Khan helmed the change to NXT 2.0 along with Kevin Dunn, who at least for now is still with the company. The idea behind 2.0 was that so many of the call-ups were failing on the main roster because they were not being adequately prepared for main roster life. And this did play out exactly as the WWE were expecting. Call-ups since 2.0 have been a lot more successful. Even just before 2.0, when they started going to more character-based, it has worked in the long run. So even though 2.0 is subjectively a worse show to watch for certain people, it does mean that people have a greater chance when they come up because they have a much more refined personality and character.
Absolutely. When you see the likes of a Tony D'Angelo or Joe Gacy, the way they've been crafted into characters and stuff, they already ready-made how Raw and SmackDown will use them, rather than saying we're going to bring up LA Knight and then all of a sudden he's leading Maximum Male Models for 3 weeks and then we're going to change it to Maxine Dupree. While we're speaking about that, any news on LA Knight? Is there a chance he may come back as the LA Knight character?
A chance. The decision was made to remove him by Vince. However, it does sound like there are some backstage issues that are at play here. So I don't think he's going to get past internal relations, talent relations, I should say, in order to come back that soon.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I miss him. I thought he was great in the role. I'm disappointed he's not on our TVs. I'm really disappointed. I'm going to say it was juicelating whatever
it is. Titillating our juices.
That's the one. Thank you very much, Tom, there. Southern Pro with Triple H in charge. Do you see people that hasn't been booked when Vince was in charge get a chance to shine? Names of like Mustafa Ali, Dijakovic, Cedric Alexander, Ricochet, Drew Gulak, etc.
Potentially, but it depends what spots open up. I see these names being much more involved after the draft than at current. And it's also worth remembering, when they get pushed, someone else has got to be removed. So, for example, we'll see less Seth, we'll see less Matt Riddle, in order to make room for an Ali or a Cedric.
Absolutely. Best way to do it is, as Tom said earlier, give people a week or two off here and there, get them the little bits of breaks. These people can get some time on TV.
That is how it's done in NXT.
That's the way to do it indeed. Also being asked here, with Vince in charge, do you see Roderick Strong getting a call up to the main roster and Gargano re-signing with WWE? What are the chances?
Well, I'm assuming here, Southern Pro, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you're referring to Triple H in charge. When we see Roderick Strong, there is definitely a lot of interest from Roderick Strong to go to AEW, and there is definitely an interest from AEW in reuniting the Undisputed Era on their programming. This is, of course, why we have 3/4 of it already there. Now, when it comes to Gargano as well, there's a lot of negotiating to take place here. Johnny Gargano chose to leave NXT. He didn't go for a competitor. He just didn't want to be there at that point in time. He wanted to consider other options, and that is still ongoing. Roderick Strong, I can see being called up to the main roster, but long-term, I'm not sure how well he would be used, given that his character isn't that well defined at this point in time.
Especially there's a lot of confliction with the Diamond Mine group as well. It's been a disaster, politely, the whole way through. It's had so many different members and reincarnations of the group the whole way through. So I can understand why they're probably going with the idea of potentially going to break that group up. But I'm not sure what happens to Roddy Strong, to be honest. I agree with you. I think he's best served to go with the Undisputed Elite in AEW at some point. Jonathan Gunn, I'm surprised he's not on our TV screen somewhere by now. I thought he would have been back.
I don't necessarily agree there. I think he's got a lot of good things happening in his life right now, and he just wanted to step away. I don't think there's anything that would convince him otherwise at this point in time. But to be fair, as someone who has a few kids in his life, I do see the benefit of just spending some time with them.
Absolutely, indeed. Yeah, can't argue with that. Justin Stevens in the house. Hope you're doing well, Justin. Thank you for your question. Would you be shocked if Bayley, Charlotte, and Owens aren't back by the end of the week? Tom, we've sort of briefly talked about the likelihood of Charlotte and Bayley. Kevin Owens as well was away. He sort of came back for a KO show. He wasn't on Raw this week, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, what would be your feelings on these three then?
Bayley, I would not be surprised if she's not back by the end of next week. It looks like they're pushing back to the draft, but we'll see how that plays out. Charlotte, I would be surprised. I do expect her for SummerSlam or straight afterwards. Ronda's got to do something, and Charlotte's right there. And when it comes to Kevin Owens, he is still carrying an injury, but when it comes to talkers, there are very few better than him. That said, it's difficult because he's on Raw as a talker, and The Miz is on Raw as a talker. I think after SummerSlam, we're more likely to see him because The Miz will have less to talk about.
Very true. Yeah, Miz will probably be licking his wounds after the Logan Paul match, I would imagine. And like you say, I made the prediction there. Charlotte Flair, I think, will be potentially the reason why Liv Morgan might win at SummerSlam. And like you say, I mean, Charlotte did have her arm broke, kayfabe, of course. Of course, she was off for a wedding. But we've seen Andrade Alidolo is back in AEW. He's going to be part of Ric Flair's farewell match this weekend. So would Charlotte be back in some capacity? I imagine potentially it would feel like the right weekend to bring her back. But as you mentioned with Kevin Owens as well, fantastic talk. We'll have to see how it goes. Patrick says, did we see The Undertaker return to fight against Seth Rollins? I'm going to answer this one very quickly. No. Tom, what do you think?
No.
Yeah, we can keep that one short and brief. The Undertaker should never return to a wrestling ring, and that's meant in the nicest possible way. A legend in his own right, but it's time to let someone else have a go. And the same with Goldberg as well. I mean, Goldberg, of course, was at SummerSlam a few years ago squashing Dolph Ziggler. Could it ever happen against Seth Rollins?
No.
We're going to stick with no one knows, but thank you, Patrick. Anyway, we do appreciate it. West Coast Podcast in the house. Hope you guys are doing well. Do you see SummerSlam as a big deal, or more so, a flush out of current storylines? Hashtag John Cena sucks. That's definitely Zach's in the house. So, what's your take on SummerSlam this year, then, Tom?
A bit of both. I do feel you do have that period. I've mentioned it a couple of times now. I feel like a broken record between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, where it's different. Wrestling in the WWE is different. SummerSlam is a point at which they say, okay, all that's done. Here's where we are now. The season premiere is WrestleMania, but SummerSlam is when things kick into gear. And we very much saw that last year as well with the return of Becky Lynch, for example. This, for me, is going to be the show that launches everything that comes afterwards. It's just a case that a lot of storylines have to be wrapped up beforehand. For example, Becky and Bianca.
Absolutely. And arguably that puts SummerSlam back into its place as arguably the second biggest show of the year. And I think many would argue or would agree as well with my feelings that the Royal Rumble, obviously these days, is the second biggest show of the year. But SummerSlam is really a big launching point, judging off last year. They could do the same again this Saturday.
Yeah, I do think so. It's the reset button that, okay, now we're starting to get serious.
Absolutely, indeed. There. Some pro wrestling from our conversation earlier with Roman Reigns and Theory. Your daddy isn't here anymore. The best line ever. I almost felt like singing that in a One Direction song, but I thought, I don't think people would appreciate that. Patrick was saying, why are we not seeing Veer Mahan not getting a big push on Raw? I love to see Veer Mahan big main event matches in WWE. He seemed to have a strong start, but he has faded away into the background. Last I seen him, he was at a barbecue.
They are already running out of ideas, and it's a little bit of creative hiatus already.
Do you feel that perhaps we talked about WWE Draft earlier on, a move to SmackDown may help that for Veer, or probably not?
I feel he needs a change of creative team, not a change of colour.
There you go. There you go. Yep. So SmackDown may not be the answer, but certainly maybe someone like Triple H may see the benefit and may push him going forward. I have to wait and see. I really get lost because the last time he was coming to Raw, it took him 6 months.
Maybe that's it. Maybe he's just got to take his time and find the way again.
Yeah. Perhaps it is. Anthony says, Tom, and this is the perfect example of why I can't take Toxic Attraction seriously as a heel champion, because they have to cheat to win all the time and be cowards. Fair point with that. Although I must say, as characters, I don't mind Toxic Attraction. I know that I think I'm in the minority when I say this.
I'm a fan of Toxic Attraction. I like the overall personalities and characters. I like that they're very refined. They take elements of characters that aren't often actually highlighted in wrestling, and they use that to their advantage. I do agree with the take that it's standard heel. There is a lot of cheating involved, and this, of course, follows up with our conversation on Roman. I would like to see them be a little more dominant, but at the same time, they are trying to put over other people. It's just, unfortunately, NXT at the moment isn't really focused on a lot of other people.
Absolutely not. But maybe things may change after SummerSlam. With a draft coming, Mandy could lose that strap. I mean, Toxic Attraction, the other two ladies, Gigi and JC, have not been the tag team champions for a little while. They've got another chance next week, but we'll see how it goes. They have got some difference of characters. I know a lot of people complained about those characters, saying they didn't want to be like them, but if it's just them, that's those characters, it's totally fine. If the whole roster was like it, then it's a problem, because everyone's then the same. I like that we have different characters on our TV shows.
Yep, completely agree.
Absolutely. Southern Pro says, would you book The Miz and Grayson Waller versus DIY feud? Just thought of the storyline when it comes to The Miz and Ciampa partnership they currently have on at the moment. I think Grayson Waller's a good talker, actually. And I think that him and The Miz could be similar like characters. Certainly, I wouldn't be against them as a team at some stage. I believe before Grayson Waller, when he was on Raw, was actually aligned with Theory for a short program when Waller had the program with AJ Styles.
Yeah, very briefly, but what I would say on here is it's a bit too far a distance at the moment for me to see that happening.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're looking to the very distant future, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Ed's saying in Sun Pro Wrestling, I think Heyman saying that they're going to add the sound guy to the list of cleaning out was even better. Then Austin Stanley, like, yeah, I loved that with the person getting fired. I thought that was a great little touch there from Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman knows exactly how to spot the exact right moment and the exact right thing to say.
Absolutely. It always sparks a crowd every time. Martin says, I hope everything goes well with the Triple H era, but if any, what things can backfire his way of creating a new WWE? What a great question from Martin.
That is a very good question. I am of the belief that if Triple H tries to make the main roster in the same way that he made the Black and Gold NXT, then the ratings of the main roster would decline to the level of the Black and Gold NXT. Black and Gold NXT had a very dedicated audience that had already decided this was the best wrestling they had. That audience was chanting NXT, NXT, NXT. Have you ever heard anyone chant WWE, WWE, WWE? No. Firstly, because W's are hell to say when you're trying to chant it. It's too many syllables. It's horrible. Why would anybody do that? But more than that, it's a very different audience. The audience in Raw and SmackDown arenas want to hate what you're doing. They have fun hating what you're doing. That's a very different situation to what Triple H is used to. He needs to essentially take a lot of what Vince McMahon was actually doing, but put his own spin on it. The worst thing he could do is abandon everything that's just been and say, okay, we're doing it my way now, and do it completely differently.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a point. Like you say, if he went to, NXT was like the Black and Gold era, as the rise of the indie star. All the indie stars coming in from everywhere, not perhaps people that Vince McMahon would have pushed, hence why they didn't do so well when they went to Raw and SmackDown. But if you took like the storylines and said, like, right, we're going to have a Gargano Ciampa-like storyline, but we're going to do it with perhaps two of the larger life characters, put that tweak and put those two things together, a Vince McMahon-like idea, but with that storyline in place, something that's continuity that works each and every week, I think then things could work a lot better with it.
I completely agree. You need that continuity and the like. You need to build on what's already there, but obviously you do still need to personalize and make those changes. If he goes too far to what he knows, we have a problem.
There we go. Houston, indeed. Side note, Suplex here saying, shout out to SCW team and the chat. Thank you, Side note. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for checking out. Drop in a question as well if you would like. Same to Ovi from the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show as well. HHW Show. Hope you are doing well.
Oh,
Ovi Manise. As well, we've got Southern Pro asking, should Vince McMahon induct himself into the Hall of Fame? No, I'm going to keep that one quite short.
I'm confident Stephanie McMahon will be inducting Vince McMahon to the Hall of Fame within the next 5 years.
There we go. There we go. It will probably happen, but certainly probably not highlighted at this particular moment. That would be pretty awkward if it did. Anthony saying, Tom, if Triple H came to you and asked you to create a pay-per-view schedule that does not include the big four, what pay-per-views would you bring back? Interesting question.
I have two immediate answers. Firstly, King of the Ring. I felt that King of the Ring was a great pay-per-view, a great format, And also the fact that the winner of the King of the Ring got a match at SummerSlam, they often forgot that, but that was how it was originally set up, meant that you could create a new star with it. That worked for Edge. That worked for Kurt Angle. That certainly worked for Brock Lesnar, even though the opportunities never quite came to fruition in the same way. Now, there's plenty of people it didn't work with. We all remember Mr. Ass. We all remember. We all remember his ass. We all remember that. Didn't work for everyone. But I would definitely bring back a formal King of the Ring. Even if it's just a tournament on the network, I'd want it. Second one, I've got to have every single year Great Balls of Fire. I loved that show. I loved it. I love all the memes that just say eat balls. I love everything involved in that concept. Take the piss out of yourself a little bit. It's okay.
Absolutely. If I had to answer that, I know it's said to Tom, but Anthony, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in as well. I would bring back Cyber Sunday, a show that was ahead of its time back in the day, and now I think would work really, really well in the modern era. It's a shame that WWE don't want to use it now, but I guess maybe they don't want us to have the say. They want to have the complete control. But I do think Cyber Sunday, even if it probably wasn't the most popular show they did back then, I do think it would have more of a buzz going today, especially with the likes of Twitter, Instagram. I just think it would be a lot better. Even TikTok, I think it would be very successful.
Completely agree. TikTok is a perfect format for it. The WWE spent the last year trying to launch their TikTok to moderate success. And in the same way that their YouTube does fantastic numbers compared to the rest of the world on YouTube, I do think that's a way that they could potentially stay ahead of the game with companies like AEW just by being a much more powerful wrestling entity online.
Absolutely, indeed. There, Ed Fry's here saying WWE brought WCW with the money they won from the Outsiders lawsuit.
That's actually a fact. Yep.
There you go. There you go. Also, Martin says, if you guys had to pick any free gimmicks of characters that Triple H created in NXT, doesn't matter if they've been released already, which ones would you bring to Raw or SmackDown?
It's difficult because when I think of great gimmicks or characters, it's difficult to name anyone. Andrade Cien Almas was a great wrestler. His gimmick was he's a great wrestler. His character was he was a heel who was a great wrestler. Aleister Black was dark and a great wrestler. His gimmick was he was dark but a great wrestler. Nikki Cross was crazy. That was it. I know I mentioned this a lot, but that was it. Tommaso Ciampa was angry at Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano was angry at Tommaso Ciampa. Can you tell me anything else about them? Anything else about their time in NXT other than that they were mad at each other? I've got nothing. So it would have to be more modern incarnations. I kind of liked Bobby Roode, but his entire gimmick was a bit of an arrogant, but nearly swore.
Go for it,
that guy. Bit of a prick. That was his entire gimmick. Drew McIntyre was, I'm back. Okay, now what? Nope, that's it. Undisputed Era, I felt, had the most character. So I'd be looking in that direction. But I would struggle beyond that to go maybe more than a year ago. Even Braun Breaker, I'm not a regular NXT watcher, but even Braun Breaker, I'm struggling for character beyond, oh, look who I came from.
It's almost like presented like a Goldberg, isn't it? And the cross between the styles. I do the free mixes, I'll kick your butt, but that's pretty much it. But I would give you Undisputed Era probably would be a top shout from that because they were kind of the most like the old days of what a DX or an NWO would be. We're going to look to shut the system, take over the company with our ways and win all the gold. Bray Wyatt was in NXT at some point, so the Eater of Worlds, I guess, would be an answer I would give. And why not? Let's go No Way Jose. He was a dancer. He danced a lot. If not, we'll get the Rosebuds back with Adam Rose, but not the bunny, please. I didn't like the bunny.
Nobody likes the bunny.
No. I'm going to probably need a Google search for this next question now that's come from Patrick. Tom, what was your favourite match from Payback 2014's pay-per-view?
I stopped watching wrestling in 2001 and returned at Battleground 2014, which was a month after Payback 2014. Now, I do believe the main event there was Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns. That may not have even been the main event. I have no idea, but that's all I've got, so that's what I'm going to say.
I need to Google search that, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, my brain's gone completely blank on that one. I saw that comment coming away and I was like, I need to Google search this, but I've been chatting too much. We'll come back to it. If anyone remembers matches, come in the chat and make sure you put Payback 2014 next to it so I remember that we come back to this and we can talk about it then. We've got Patrick as well saying, what was your best SummerSlam match in WWE? Oh, this is a really good question, this one.
AJ Styles versus John Cena, hands down.
Fantastic match, that one. Really, really good. A lot of people were a big fan of the Shawn Michaels versus Triple H back in 2002. I think that's definitely a strong contender. But for myself personally, I'm a bit biased. I'm going to go with Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog back in 1992, purely because that, for me, has a bit of feeling. It was in the UK, and it was the moment I could turn around and say to you, I'm sticking around here. You know, I watched WrestleMania 8. It was my first ever show. I enjoyed it. I then sort of watched a few primetime wrestlings. When it got to SummerSlam, this was in the UK. The Bulldog with Lennox Lewis coming down. Bret Hart was my favorite at the time. The match between him and the Bulldog, that for me just sold it. I was like, I'm here for the long term. And do you know what? I'm still here now. You've got to put up with me doing these live streams each and every week.
I also want to give a special mention to The Rock versus Triple H in a ladder match at SummerSlam 98. You just mentioned the match that made you stick around. That was the one for me.
There you go. There's a lot of personal feelings that come with those, but certainly interested in other people's in the comments below as well. Martin, is there anything on Io Shirai's status with WWE?
At the moment, it's still an ongoing discussion. Her contract is coming up soon. However, there is no definitive answer as to whether or not she's staying or going. They're discussing it.
Absolutely. We're not had a question from Ovi yet, so let's get Ovi on here. I would love to see Charlotte, Bayley and Becky Lynch to unite and become a force. What do you think? We could get like the horsewomen, but without Sasha.
Without Sasha, it makes the horsewoman very, very difficult because it will always remind people that, oh, there's one missing. And they don't really want to draw too much attention to that. So it's harder to see now. That said, we do have enough people now high up in the company position, such as Bianca Belair, Ronda Rousey, Alexa Bliss, Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, that we could have a faction of 4 at the top and have enough people to actually balance them out. I do feel that now is the time to do it, and that's a great way to lead to a fatal 4-way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would like to see it, but I understand your reasons why WWE wouldn't do it. But like you say, we've got enough people that can go and challenge them. And if we are ever going to get it, like you say, it feels like now would be the perfect time before they start to fall down the pecking order, because eventually that will happen, that transition. Charlotte, Bayley and Becky seems hard to believe, but they won't be at the top forever. They'll have to pass the torch somewhere. And it feels like we're in the process of doing that when we see the likes of Bianca Belair currently leading the charge. Like you mentioned, we've got Ronda Rousey, Liv Morgan's currently SmackDown Women's Champion. None of them are champions. It feels very rare that you can say that in WWE at the same time.
That transition started with the WrestleMania match between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. That transition is continuing at the moment. It is no longer the case that the 4 horsewomen are the sole focus in the women's divisions. It would be, for example, names like Alexa Bliss got the opportunity. We've had Natalya and Naomi as champions at times. But outside of that, the horsewomen were the focal point since 2015. Right now, that is not the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have to agree with that 100%. Latinia's time saying, when will the draft be? I haven't heard anything about it. It's usually around October time, if I'm not mistaken, Tom. Is that going to be the same this year?
It is. The intention of the draft is always to make the rosters solid before Survivor Series. Survivor Series, of course, is Raw versus SmackDown. So the idea is that they lock them in and say, okay, here's who you should be rooting for. That doesn't quite work because it's like weeks beforehand that they do it. And we don't even know if that's going to be the format this year's Survivor Series. But from best I can tell, we're expecting a late September, early October draft this year.
Interesting stuff indeed. I'm just going to give a shout as well to Silk and Steve that was on the stream with me. We were talking about this during Vince's retirement episode when we did a live stream this past weekend, and we talked about the draft. And he suggested the idea that the best time to do the draft would be in December after the Survivor Series, because here's your reward. You've won Survivor Series, Raw, SmackDown. That sort of then gets the first draft pick, so gets to pick someone from the other show. Then you can lead into the WrestleMania storylines with fresh new draft, stories going on. You've got the fallout that leads to SummerSlam. Then you can get to Survivor Series where you have the final payoff with the people of Raw and SmackDown, and then you can go back into the cycle again. Does that make more sense of you as a perfect placement that could be for the draft?
I think it makes more sense with where we are right now, and more sense if we're building around Survivor Series. I still believe the superstar shakeup as it was right after WrestleMania was the best move, because WrestleMania is the season finale. The wrestling season starts with WrestleMania and ends with WrestleMania.
That's usually true as well. Obviously, I miss the old days when you used to have the hundreds of people come up on the screen within 2 seconds, and then you just go, boom, and there you go, John Cena's going, and then goes back again at the same show. Those were good times. Patrick here saying, how many people attending Clash at the Castle pay-per-view in the UK? Well, apparently it can hold up to 74,000. What is the current sort of standing that you'd know right now, Tom?
Last I heard, we were about halfway there. A lot of tickets have not actually gone to individuals, though. They've gone to companies. And prize draws and the like. So it's very difficult because, particularly with stadiums in the UK, they tend to sell off tickets to a point that actual paying fans get about 20% on average of the actual tickets there.
Absolute shame if that's the case. Would you say that this is going to be a success, or do you reckon this could be looking like it's not a success at this moment?
I think this will be a tremendous success for the WWE because those 20% of fans will be the loudest people you've ever heard in your life.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. We want more of these. We don't want it to be a one and done, you know. Anthony's saying, do you think that one, Gable Stevenson debuts and might get a call up the rest of the Diamond Mine that doesn't include Ivy Nell and put them together with Gable?
I don't see any pairing up happening there. Gable Stevenson is likely to have someone as a mouthpiece, but the WWE are confident at this point that he's got the whole package. They just need to convince him to step into the ring like they wanted him to.
Interesting. I don't see that happening either at the particular moment, but be interested to see what will happen with Gable when he does come around. But if he does come around, of course. Noob and Co saying, who do the WWE push in this era? Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley, Doudrop, Asuka.
The most likely people to get big pushes right now are people that are already near the top, people like Liv Morgan, AJ Styles, and the like. I think Damian Priest is in for a good run. I think Madcap Moss is in for a good run, as is Boogs upon his return. There's a number one. That number one for me would be Seth.
Interesting stuff indeed. Oh yeah, Seth would always get a good rub under Triple H. Obviously, they've always had a lot of history together, and obviously with the Authority storyline, NXT aligned. Obviously, even now with just that quote tweet just the other day. So yeah, interesting stuff indeed. Of them five there, I would say Damian Priest. I think, but I would like to see Rhea Ripley have a really big push at the top at some point as well.
Of those five, I would say Rhea as well. Yes.
Yes. Southern Pro Wrestling favourite match is Triple H and Shawn Michaels from 2002. So that was a popular one, didn't I? Also, we've got here Patrick saying, would you like to see a special guest host on Raw like we saw back in 2009 and 2010 Raws? Now, Tom, I'm not sure if you'd be familiar with these, but are you familiar with the particular, like, say, Bob Barker episode where we had him come and do the Price is Right, and we see people like Chris Jericho and Santino Moreno getting upset on Raw? We even had, I can't remember who it was, but someone came in and actually pronounced SummerSlam being the Summerfest that year.
Yeah, I caught up on this, and I wish I hadn't. Let's never do that again. But it does depend who it is. Someone like Pat McAfee would have been perfect if he wasn't already with the company, for example.
Absolutely. I did quite enjoy the Bob Barker episode, hence why you can tell I remember that a lot more than the others. Yeah, Southern Pro Wrestling, if the IWC don't like a heel, I say that heel is doing a great job being a heel. Totally agree.
I also agree. Baron Corbin is one of my favorites in wrestling at the moment because he's a traditional Attitude Era style heel and people hate him for it, which shows just how good he is.
Absolutely. Our good friends from Circle of Debate are in the chat. Good to see you guys here. In regards of creative, should Triple H try to bring his team from the black and gold era to the main roster? Jeremy Borash is one who's currently there. Who would be a good? Would it be a good idea or a bad idea, Tom?
Triple H is going to put his own team together, but he won't completely wrecking ball everything that came before. There'll be a couple of names involved. Jeremy Borash undoubtedly will at least pitch some ideas and they'll give him a shot, but we'll see how it plays out. Triple H won't be making wholesale changes, but he will be making changes.
Interesting stuff indeed. We'll see how it's going to play out. Certainly, I would like to see a bit of a twist come in there. I think certainly would freshen things up. I do feel we're a bit stale of what we see with the current Raws and SmackDowns every week. Shout out to Joe. I'm sorry.
I'm expecting we're going to see more women in the writing room.
That's good to see as well there. Shout out to Joey as well. I was going to say a big hello to you, Tom. Hope you're doing well, Joey. Hope you're enjoying the stream. Thank you for checking it out. Patrick here saying, what's next for Kevin Owens in WWE? I would love to see Kevin Owens become a heel, join the Judgment Day faction. Interesting idea.
It is an interesting idea. I don't necessarily see it fitting the character at this point in time, but then we also had Big O way back when.
Absolutely.
Stranger things have happened.
Absolutely. Joey has a question, so let's get that up here for us. He says, who is Seth's mystery opponent going to be at SummerSlam? We spoke about this earlier. Do we think there's any chance at all? On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the chances that this can happen?
The WWE have made no tease of a mystery opponent. Why would they not tease it if they had the opportunity to and get more viewers in that way?
It would be amazing. I'd love to see it, but unfortunately, as it seems to be a 1 out of 10, sadly, at this point. Southern Pro here as well. When it comes to booking in wrestling, I always look towards the 3 words: long-term booking. Certainly is a good strategy, if we're being honest.
What better long-term booking have we got than the McMahon-Helmsley faction or regime as they were taking over the company after 21 long years?
Absolutely. You love to see it. You love to see it. Patrick is saying, bring back Unforgiven and Armageddon's pay-per-view. Would also love to see Payback and Cyber Sunday. Also, Fantastic. And also a shout on this as well from Tino's time. Guys, what about Taboo Tuesday or Cyber Sunday? Obviously, Taboo Tuesday was the original format brought on a Tuesday. And what do you think of Tuesday pay-per-views? Because obviously, I mean, it wasn't really a pay-per-view back in the day, but even in the early 90s, we had Tuesday in Texas. Do you reckon it could ever work in the middle of the week? I imagine it's quite difficult with people when they have work the next day.
Yeah, my opinion on that would be go to hell, WWE. I'm going to get some sleep.
It's hard for us in the UK, okay? We're very happy we have Saturday shows. If anything, it should be Cyber Saturday, not Cyber Sunday.
I'm very happy to get SummerSlam on a Saturday this year. I love the idea that I'll be able to sleep properly for once.
Absolutely. I believe, if I'm not mistaken as well, that all shows for the rest of this year are on Saturdays.
They are indeed.
We get sleep. It's fantastic. Or Sundays, just more relaxed. It's beautiful. Patrick here. Do you guys want to see Vim Hun go ahead and challenge against Bobby Lashley for the United States Championship in a match? And it'd be a fun match to see. Certainly could be like an open challenge or something and give Veer something to do. I'd be able to be a fresh match we've never seen before.
Yeah, it'd be different. I wouldn't mind it. Veer would be losing.
Yeah, that would be the case. And it does go on to say it would be awesome to see a Clash of the Castle pay-per-view in the UK. Certainly would be, because at the moment I couldn't think what Bobby Lashley would be doing at that show.
Yeah.
As well, Southern Pro Wrestling War Games on the main roster with Triple H in charge. The Bloodline, Roman, Usos, and Solo versus Team WWE, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, and Ciampa. Love the idea. I think War Games would be fantastic for Survivor Series.
I completely agree. War Games is perfect for Survivor Series. I definitely think we'd go 3 teams though, and potentially the Bloodline would be the one who actually stems on both Raw and SmackDown. We have an actual Raw team and a SmackDown team led by Seth and Drew.
Interesting stuff indeed there. I'd like that philosophy as well. Second debate, with now Triple H in charge creative, can we see a rebrand of the women's division, elevate the division once again? I think you sort of elaborated on this on the last question there, that we're going to get more female writers, which hopefully should see that rise.
We are going to get more female writers, which very much should mean we have better storylines. We are getting matches, but they're not getting enough time. And certainly the storylines are not very good at the moment unless there's a championship involved. Becky Lynch quite often basically just writes her own promos because the ones that she gets are not good enough. So we need more people in the writing room.
We do, and she does a fantastic job as well. Becky Lynch has been my favourite character to watch in the last sort of 4 or 5 months. It's been fantastic to see the meltdown to get herself back into this championship match. I can't wait to see where it goes next, whether she wins or loses this Saturday at SummerSlam. But one further question I'll ask, I think I've asked you this one before, but hey, it's been a few months and things have changed since the last time I've asked it. Any chance of an Evolution 2?
No chance whatsoever of an Evolution 2. The original reason for the Evolution pay-per-view was that women could not wrestle in Saudi Arabia, and the WWE wanted to make the show because they basically were leaving the women behind and they weren't making enough money off of them. Now, of course, they can wrestle in Saudi Arabia. They can make money off of them. They don't need a women's pay-per-view in their eyes.
There you go. There you go. Whether we agree or disagree, that's the answer from WWE. HHW show. The Shield defeated the Authority in Paybacks 2014. Of course, that's also, Patrick said that was the main event. Definitely, I vaguely remember that now. That's where Seth turned the next night to join the Authority. So, yes, that is the one. And I would say that would be the match I probably would have enjoyed most because I loved where that storyline went.
I definitely would have seen the pay-per-view. I just don't really remember it at this point, and I wouldn't have seen it live. But what I will say is the Shield was definitely my bag at the time. So even though my favorite Shield match was the Shield versus the Wyatt family, you can't really complain at the Shield versus Evolution, can you?
Not at all. Not at all. Southern Pro Wrestling saying British Bulldog versus Bret Hart SummerSlam 1992 got me into wrestling. You know my backstory towards that, Steve. I certainly do indeed. And what a fantastic choice as well to get you into pro wrestling. Anthony saying Tom, with WWE being TVPG right now, do you think the 3 stages of hell match could work with that reading?
I think the 3 stages of hell match could definitely work. It would not feel like hell in any way, shape, or form.
It's probably
it would be the 3 stages of heck.
Probably a best way to put it.
The 3 stages of darn.
Yeah, there we are.
3 stages of
I think that's the way to go with it. Absolutely. We're lucky we still have Hell in a Cell in this era, to be brutally honest. So Wonder in the house. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for checking out the stream. Is Randy Orton coming back at SummerSlam? As we spoke about this earlier, it looks like it won't be for a while yet.
That is correct. No plans for Randy Orton to be at SummerSlam in any sort of wrestling capacity at this point in time.
Absolutely. Patrick also saying my best SummerSlam match, CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy, TLC 2009, underrated. I like that match. And Undertaker versus Edge at SummerSlam 2008, where Edge literally went to hell. And that was at the start of the PG era, believe it or not. And we still have hell going in the PG era now. I'm saying hell far too much. Ed Fry's here saying Sheamus versus Cesaro US title, Ryback versus the Rhodes Brothers, Russo versus Biggie, Bo Dallas versus Kofi, Bad News Barrett versus RVD in a ladder match for the IC title, Cena with the Usos versus Bray with the Wyatts, Paige versus Fox for the Divas title. That was Payback 2014. Ed, you're absolutely amazing with giving us that card. Does it change anything in your mind there, Tom, that would appeal to you more than obviously having the Shield and, of course, the Evolution going on?
Not in the slightest. How far we've come.
Absolutely. Although I would say Bad News Barrett and RVD in the ladder match, that would tempt me a little bit. But yeah, and Cena and Bray Wyatt was a last man standing match. Juggernaut 097 says, "Sup, Steve? Good seeing you. Good seeing you as well. Hope you're doing well. And thank you for checking out the stream. No, you did a Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor review very recently on your channel as well. Make sure people go and check that out if they're into ROH. Also, we've got Anthony here saying, Tom and Steve, I kind of hope WWE brings back Insurrection, a fun UK pay-per-view back in the day, but of course, did lead to a plane ride from hell.
It led to a few issues beyond that as well. It just wasn't a pay-per-view that actually worked out long term.
No, absolutely not. Also, Anthony says, honestly, it would be kind of cool if WWE brings back some old ECW pay-per-views. They're bringing back Heatwave for NXT in a couple of weeks' time. I was quite surprised to see that, but Heatwave, certainly one of my favorites from ECW back in the day.
The issue is it wouldn't feel like ECW in a PG-14 area, and that I feel is the biggest issue. Absolutely.
You could say they were guilty as charged for that. They don't want to be living dangerously. I'll stop there before I get too far ahead. Juggernaut says, it still feels weird that SummerSlam is in July. I remember as a kid, I hated it because that means school was getting ready to start again. Of course, the younger feeling of when it was in August towards the end of August as well. But now it's the end of July. Obviously, being from the UK, most people will be starting their summer holidays at that time. But it does feel weird that it's in July this year, doesn't it?
It does. It used to be that it was one of the only shows I could actually watch live when I was a kid because it was in like the late end of the summer holidays. And now here I am. I don't even know what summer holidays are at the minute, to be honest. But still, it feels far too early. And it feels like August is going to be a bit of a long, slow dead zone.
Absolutely, because there's no premium live event in there. And we've got September the 3rd, the next time. There's like 6 weeks to build for the Clash of the Castle. But hey, we've got NXT Heatwave.
Yeah, for the sake of my shows, can Vince come back and then retire again?
Yeah, that would be. We'll see what we can. I'll have a word. I can't promise you anything, but I'll see what I can do. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, Justin has got another question for us. Thank you, Justin. Says, since WWE loves doing multiple people matches, I've always wondered why they never did another 6-man Hell in a Cell. The 6-man Hell in a Cell was one of my favorite matches ever. It was brilliant. I did a retro review on this just recently, and it was so much fun to go back and watch this show, mainly just for that match alone. So recommend anyone that hasn't seen it to go and check it out. But I know the answer to this because, Tom, I asked this on your live stream. Tom, take it away.
It was one of those matches where everyone got a little bit hurt, everyone got a little bit wrecked, and the audience did not really track what was going on at the time in the arena. So it was hard for everyone to pop and everyone to be excited because there was just a lot going on. The end result being that you had a lot of, okay, these two people are doing something, everyone else lay down. So it felt disjointed if you were actually there in the arena. Now, if you're a fan at home and you're watching the camera come along, great. But everyone's hurt, everyone's a bit knackered. And ultimately, at that point, you had so many big stars that throwing them all together just made the rest of the pay-per-view basically pointless. No one really remembers anything from the rest of the pay-per-view. It was a bit of a double-edged sword there.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, I think when we spoke about this before, also, we talked about the Elimination Chamber came in just a couple of years later at the Survivor Series. Now we have 6-man matches in the cage already. There's not really need to throw it in Hell in a Cell either.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea was with the Elimination Chamber that it would sort of be the natural progression from that, but they still needed a way to keep Hell in a Cell interesting. They've had problems because the Hell in a Cell sort of made the cage match defunct. So they've tried a lot of different options of, oh, well, escaping the cage is the main thing, but how do you build that much tension around that when a 1-2-3 is a 1-2-3? So sometimes an idea steps on another idea's toes, and it's not the worst thing in the world.
Absolutely. Shame the Punjabi prison match never worked.
Yeah, shame.
Speaking of that, do you ever see WWE pay-per-view in India? There's a segue.
Yes, I do. I expect we're going to see that at some point soon. The WWE have put a lot of work into India. They've sort of given up a little bit, but they are still working on the concept of WWE India. The issue is with Triple H now in charge of creative and talent relations. His job previously, which was the global expansion of NXT Asia, which has been closed down since because the last 2 years obviously put an end to that. We still had the launch of a WWE India, but it's not really being considered to be a success as of yet.
Absolutely. I mean, if WWE could have done, I think they'd have already done it. So absolutely 100% see this happening in the future. Patrick, unfortunately, this one's going to be a no. Is there a chance we see Bray Wyatt return to this year in WWE? I mean, that would get your live streams going, certainly in the month of August.
Certainly it would. It's not going to happen, but it'd be lovely.
It certainly would. We've sort of answered this one, Southern Pro, already. The matches that both got you into wrestling, his was British Bulldog and Bret Hart. It definitely was the one that got me sticking around. But I will give that shout out to the first ever match you ever get to see that I got to watch with the privilege was Tito Santana versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. It's one I like to still go back and watch from time to time. It's not something that people turn around today and say it's a 5-star classic, but where you begin, it's a great place to begin. But this match, like I say, this is the one that definitely knew I was sticking around for the long term. Bulldog versus Bret Hart.
First match I ever saw was a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Championship match in which the Road Dogg picked up a concussion. Everyone kept punching him until Steve Austin literally walked into the ring, punched some people, dragged Road Dogg into the corner, tagged him out, and then dragged him out the ring as well. Great times. There was, I think, 20 people around the ring at the start of the match. It's absolute carnage. Absolute carnage. Great times.
Very much indeed. Absolutely. Joey here saying, I saw a report from Brian Alvarez that WWE wasn't impressed with the college athletes at the recent tryout.
To my knowledge, there weren't many college athletes at the recent tryouts. The recent tryouts were not held for college athletes. College athletes don't go through tryouts in the same way. So I have some questions about this. The recent tryouts were for indie wrestlers that were invited. Actual college tryouts go for a separate selection process. So I have serious questions about this report.
Oh, interesting stuff indeed. And also, we saw Paul Heyman do a little snippet, got exposed to Twitter. Just again, shows the genius that is Paul Heyman. West Coast Podcast, we cover a lot of wrestling weekly. You certainly do. I watch their live streams. Which show do you actually get excited about each week, Tom?
I still enjoy SmackDown. I know it's up and down at the moment, and certainly before the draft, it was can't miss TV. It was absolutely fantastic before the draft, and I love that. Since the draft, it's not been to the same level, but every now and then there's still a little spark. Still a little spark that gets me going. I know at the moment Raw's the better show, but in my heart of hearts, I'm a SmackDown guy.
The thing is, I kind of feel the same with you with that because SmackDown, when it comes to the two shows, it's a much easier watch, even though Raw's the better show right now. SmackDown is a tougher watch at the moment, but when it has the better writing of the two shows, it's easily my favorite WWE show by a country mile every single week. But I have to be honest, and this is not the right thing to say on the WWE stream, so thanks for this, but AEW Dynamite is the show that I probably look forward to most at this particular moment, just because I think it's the most consistent and it's a 2-hour show. If Raw was a 2-hour show, it probably would be Raw because I've always been a WWE guy. You know, that's the way it is. Southern Pro Wrestling, WWE barely legal pay-per-view, Vince McMahon. Hang on, that's definitely not right. It's definitely not barely legal. It's not to allegations anyway. Vince McMahon comes out of retirement, aka Vince will be living dangerously if that happened.
I will make no comment on that in the hope that it stops forever.
There we go. There we go. I'm going to need to put all my links to keep me safe again on in the chat after this. I'm going to link Tom's channel as well to anyone that's not actually subscribed to Tom's channel. Make sure to go and do so. I will do it straight after this video is finished. If you've enjoyed this video up to this point, then please do consider hitting the like button. Share with a friend as well. Let us know that SCW is here. Subscribe to the channel as well. We've got a few questions in at the moment. And Tom, you want to go for a little bit longer?
Absolutely. You go for it.
We'll go for a little bit longer then to go through some more questions. Get them in while you still can, and we'll probably close things off in about 20 minutes or so. Dan Williams in UK in the house. Hope everyone is doing well. We are. Thank you for checking out the stream. He will be going to Clash at the Castle as well. Of course, he is from the native of Wales also, so very exciting times for him. Also, Juggernaut saying here, NXT Heatwave and All Out are on the same night. I know there is actually an NXT show planned for the 4th of September. Also, that is rumored, from my understanding, according to, I believe was what I saw on Wrestle Talk. They probably got the source from somewhere else, but I believe that they actually said that this could be in the UK.
Yeah, there are certainly rumours of that happening. Nothing's been agreed to my knowledge at this point in time. When you say their Wrestle Talk, I don't believe they've had any original sources so far since their writer went to Give Me Sport. And this is the person who reported that at this year's WrestleMania, we were going to get a fatal 4-way with the Horsewomen while Bayley was still out injured. So I have questions there.
Yeah, there we go. I'm not going to name names, but I know exactly who you're talking about. Martin Career here says, well, both of you enjoy your evening or night being in the stream. It's been great. Can't wait to see you both when you do another one soon. Thank you so much, Martin. I'm glad you have enjoyed it.
Pleasure to chat with you, Martin. Hope to see you on some of our shows soon.
Absolutely. Martin, do, and as everyone, I say, make sure to go and subscribe to Tom Colohue as well. And you've got Colohue Gaming as well. We'll just take a quick brief interlude. You do a gaming channel as well, don't you?
Just starting out with the Colohue Gaming right now. I didn't do a show this week because I've been working on some editing, but we are halfway through The Last of Us Part 2. We'll be jumping into that. It's just a very laid-back, relaxed sort of gaming live stream. Then I edit down the live video to put it into an actual video of highlights. So depending on what you're looking for, live and interactive, or just watch on catch-up in like highlight form, you've got both options there coming soon.
Absolutely fantastic. So indeed, recommend everyone to go to check that out as well. Subscribe to Tom Colohue and Colohue Gaming. Patrick, do you want to see Braun Strowman and the Fiend Bray Wyatt? Well, we've spoken a lot about Bray Wyatt, so let's talk about Braun Strowman here. Any chance you'd like to see him return to WWE one day?
Nope.
Nope. We're keeping that simple. Keeping that quiet. Nope.
I think the way he was booked was detrimental to every single person he came up against. And while he wouldn't be booked the same way, I believe his choices since have made it very difficult for any WWE interest to manifest.
I can see where you're coming from with that. And I would say that while he was in WWE, there was a period where he was definitely, could have been one of the most, if not the most overactive in the company, but then they chose to completely muck it up. And yeah, like you say, a lot of damage got done to the Bray Wyatt character in his last sort of couple of years with the company. Some Pro Wrestling, if Bray Wyatt ever came back to WWE, I think October would be a great return. It would be around Halloween time, fits his character. Would be awesome if it was to happen, but again, sadly, don't see it happening anywhere in the near future.
I have difficulty with this sort of thing because, particularly when it comes to AEW, I've been told by so many people that every single day, every single week, every single month is the perfect time for the return of Bray Wyatt. The amount of mental gymnastics that has happened at times as regards Bray Wyatt, it tells me that he's easily one of the most popular characters that WWE have ever had. And to my knowledge, there is no interest in either side in any sort of return. The amount of times I've gone onto my show and said, yeah, there are rumors that Bray Wyatt will be returning this week. He won't be. That's the most reported thing I've done.
Absolutely, and to be fair, I'm one of them. I think there's a lot of potential with that character to make that work further again in WWE, or even to go back to Eater of Worlds. Or he's sort of he's such a talented dude. He could even come up with something completely different, but it's just something that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Certainly not in the near future, anyway. Is Kevin Dunn and Bruce Pritchard still in charge of WWE? I'm guessing creative. We're talking here. Well, I mean, Bruce Pritchard now would have given up to Triple H, I would imagine, but Kevin Dunn is still around, and I'm guessing Bruce Pritchard still is in the background.
Bruce Pritchard, to my knowledge, is not currently acting with the company. He was the acting head of creative briefly. Triple H has come in, and while Bruce Pritchard is still there at this point in time, it is because of the transition. Kevin Dunn is still in place. However, to be blunt, the people in charge of the WWE does not involve Triple H. It is entirely Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan at this point in time.
There you go, indeed. There, Martin Career says he's got one more comment before he leaves. He agrees with Colohue. I'm also a blue brand guy since I watched WWE since 2009. So the blue brand is particularly popular. What's everyone else's thoughts? Let us know in the comments. What show do you look forward to most on a weekly basis? While we answer a question on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is there any chance of a return at Survivor Series 2022?
There is more of a chance of Vince McMahon returning at Survivor Series 2022.
That's a horrible thought to think there. Fingers crossed for the Rumble then. Dan Williams UK. Not going to lie, I've been enjoying British indie wrestling a lot lately. Something I never thought I'd enjoy it as much. I'm a mainstream guy mainly, but there's so much talent like Chris Ridgway and Warren Banks. Well, there you go. Are you familiar with those couple of wrestlers? Do you watch a lot of the indie stuff going on the British scene?
I watch some of the indie wrestling on the British scene. I'm local to Preston, so I often see shows there, or quite local to Manchester. I know people in my area, but not too many of them. But I like to dip in every now and then, and I'm familiar with the names, yes.
Absolutely. I must admit, I'm not as good with the indie scene as I should be. And obviously, when we got to the likes of what Culture did back in the day when they had their promotion going on for a short time.
WCPW.
That was the one. Yeah, you catch a few people on there. Then obviously we had the World of Sport on ITV make its comeback, and obviously NXT UK happened, and all of a sudden every name I knew was on that show eventually. So you know, it just shows what happens. Really, it's all the beast of WWE, and yeah, well, we know what's happened since, but we won't go into that. That's for another day. The Rock versus Roman Reigns match happening or not at WrestleMania 39?
The Rock currently has no wrestling bookings in his calendar.
I want to see it happen, but yeah, I don't think it will. Any chance as well that Logan Paul could bring Jake Paul into WWE? Now, I imagine after his WrestleMania appearance, I would say this one would be not so likely now.
Yeah, definitely not too popular backstage, Jake Paul, after what happened at WrestleMania. However, that is a bridge that could potentially be mended by
Have to
money,
wait and see.
by
Yes,
lots of money.
Lots of money always fixes a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, and they're both actually were on the posters for Madison Square Garden this week, which Logan Paul put on his Twitter account, which I wasn't aware of, but there you go. Would you like to see Logan Paul challenge Roman Reigns? Not in the short term, to be honest. I would like Logan Paul to be a heel. I think he's got bags of potential to really get over as a superstar, but I don't want to see it as a babyface. And I know we spoke about Roman Reigns going against who he's against. He can fit either side, but I still see Roman going against baby faces. Logan Paul currently is listed as that, but I want to see him transition to a heel after SummerSlam. Is there any chance I could get my wish?
It's not particularly likely. Logan Paul is booed by most audiences, but does bring in a lot of young viewers. So treating him like a face will have the same effect as treating Roman Reigns like a face, which, despite the opinion of many fans, was an overwhelming success for the company. The money is what talks, and bringing Logan Paul in as a face has brought more viewers, more money, and he'll be selling a lot of merch after SummerSlam. As goes challenging Roman Reigns, it is far too early for that. However, again, money talks.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, because we've not really spoken about Pat McAfee during this stream, so I'll just take the opportunity to, as we're talking about celebrity wrestling here, could Pat McAfee eventually transition into a full-time superstar in WWE?
He could, but I find that very unlikely. He has other commitments that maintain, and that will result essentially in him always needing at least a little bit more time off than most. I think he also really enjoys the commentary desk. I would like to keep him as the special attraction that he is, because I just really enjoy his work at the moment.
I do as well. Any chance we get the White Stripes Seven Nation Army again this on SummerSlam this weekend?
Possible, but it would be quite expensive for the WWE.
They've got some money. I'm happy for them to do it. Listen to me, just do it, WWE. Southern Pro Wrestling. Tom, get your hands on Horizon Forbidden West. That's a game suggestion there for you.
I've played Zero Dawn, really enjoyed it. I'm waiting to try and get hold of a PS5 so I can play Forbidden West on that.
Absolutely, there we go. And some pros are saying, I love my comment. Came up with the great content. Thank you so much. If you was going to book your own WrestleMania main event, who would headline? Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn for the WWE Championship would be Southern Pros option. So if you could book a WrestleMania main event, who would headline?
Becky Lynch versus Bayley, no question.
That's a fantastic match. Unfortunately, I'm going to go for the money side of things. Unfortunately, I can't help but look past the way WWE does things. So I would go for night one, Becky versus Ronda Rousey. I still think it's the big money match they could do for the women's side. And I believe I would like to see Cody versus Roman Reigns as the other one. But I do think that championships and situations will probably change that match from happening.
Cody versus Seth seems more likely at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that will be the one. I think Roman, whoever he faces, probably will be for a championship rather than having both of them. Joey saying, I hope Johnny Gargano comes back soon. We have spoke a lot about Johnny Gargano. We both hope so, don't we? But probably not for the foreseeable.
Hope so. Don't personally see it.
No, and same with as well. Kevin Carpenter, I hope you're doing well, Kevin. Do you think Io Shirai comes up to the main roster or is she out the door? I mean, what would be the situation?
Negotiations are ongoing as per a new contract. They would need to make a substantial offer that includes main roster, because the offer has been on the table for a while now and it just hasn't actually come to fruition yet. The belief seems to be that she's not that interested.
Interesting stuff indeed there. As Southern Pro Wrestling, AEW or Impact when it comes to shows would be his choice. Impact do a fantastic product, very underrated. They do deserve more love.
I agree with that. I enjoy Impact when I watch it. It's just very rare that I have the time to do so.
No, I've struggled in recent weeks as well to keep up with Impact, sadly. But definitely while Bound for Glory, I look to try and be back in the door. Joey saying, do you think Triple H will bring back some of the NXT talents like Killer Cross, Dakota Kai, Tegan Nox? We haven't talked about Tegan Nox on this show.
We haven't. The main reason that the WWE let her go is a history of injuries, and I don't expect them to go back to that well.
No, absolutely not. Patrick as well, what's your favourite match in wrestling history?
If I had to pick one match in wrestling history, and I believe you already know this one, Steve, you've asked me this question before, it would be the WrestleMania 12 main event, the Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Personally, it just appealed to everything I love in wrestling, and that is all I'll say about it.
Absolutely insane for me as well when I say that mine would be end of an era, WrestleMania 28, Undertaker versus Triple H with Shawn Michaels as the guest referee. I was a sucker for that match. I absolutely love the especially that moment where Shawn just, conflicted as Shawn does, the sweet chin music into the pedigree, that kick out for me. Oh, he doesn't get much better than that. It really, really doesn't for me. Dan Williams as well. Thoughts on Theory? I've seen he gets a lot of hate, but I think he's got all the tools and he's just doing so well. He showed it on Raw. Tom, what's your thoughts on Theory?
a tremendous upside, has managed to escape some serious problems in the last couple of years that could potentially have sunk him, depending on the situations being made public or not. I'm waiting to see if that potentially becomes a bit of a time bomb later on in his career. We'll see what actually happens. Obviously, at the moment, there's a burden of evidence that has not been fulfilled, so business as usual.
Absolutely.
When it comes to Theory, I think he's got tremendous talent. I think he's an amazing talker. I think his work with Pat McAfee was magnificent. I'm really excited to see where he goes. And I do like that where he was in NXT is nowhere close to where he is on the main roster. And yet somehow he's still the same person.
Yeah, I incredibly. Yeah, I think that's very well rounded the way you've put that there. And I think Fury's got all the tools to be a top guy for many, many years in WWE. Like you say, on the mic, he's very good. He's just got time on his side. I know a lot of people gave a lot of hate the fact that he won Money in the Bank. I thought it was the right call. I'm not going to lie. I like the idea of building new stars. I like the idea of looking into the future, what we can have with WWE. And if, like you say, if everything goes right and everything is correct with Theory, then he's definitely a guy that should be pushed towards the top. He's got all the attributes to be a top guy for many, many years to come.
He does. I completely agree with all of that.
Absolutely. Also, Patrick here saying, are you guys not tired of seeing white ring ropes for every WWE premium live event? Personally, I don't notice it so much with the ring ropes, but as I said, I'm more of a sucker for the sets.
Yeah, I just watch the wrestlers more than anything, to be honest.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Patrick said his favorite match of all time is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker from WrestleMania 24 2009. A very, very popular shout. Tommy, I love this question. Rank your mods.
You're always at the bottom, Ed, and you know
that. But great show, guys. Thank you very much, Ed, for checking out as well. And we've got a couple more questions coming from Patrick, and I've got one that I've been trying to get out from Bama Dave since the start of the show, but we've been so busy. I'll get it towards the end here. What is next for Brock Lesnar after Roman Reigns' match at SummerSlam? Great question, this one.
Potentially some more time off. It is unlikely that he travels to the UK, but we will likely see him in Saudi Arabia against someone. I would be looking towards a Drew, but I hope it'll be a Sheamus.
Do you think that a Bobby Lashley match could happen again at some point? Obviously, they had a match at the Royal Rumble, had a lot of shenanigans that kind of sport the result of that match, but maybe that's what made that result happen.
Yeah, I believe it could, but I would much prefer to see Bobby versus Roman at some point soon. I think there's a reason their matches have been inconclusive so far, but by that I mean Brock and Bobby. And I think it's a situation where chances are no one's going to end up happy, so maybe just leave that one alone.
Absolutely. And just want to say as well quickly, Brock Lesnar versus Gunther.
It's a great concept. I'm very excited by it. Give it to me, please. Absolutely. Also, I think it's a very good thing for the Intercontinental Championship to see Brock Lesnar go for it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Because everyone says that if we couldn't get on a premium live event for that, it won't get on for anything, will it? Let's be fair.
Pretty much.
We've got a question that's jumping in here at the end here. Is Ciampa going to turn on The Miz at SummerSlam? Great question.
No, the entire plot line when it comes to SummerSlam is focused entirely around Logan Paul. Anything that Ciampa does, maybe a late change from Triple H, so I can't guarantee it, but he's a very small-time player in this overall story.
There we go. Question, what's your favorite Great Khali matches in WWE?
None of them. Not a single one.
No. I think if I had to try and pick one out of the top of my head, I probably would go. I don't think he had a bad match with Batista, and I'm trying to think when this was. I want to say it's around SummerSlam 2007. I think probably would be the shout.
I wasn't really watching at the time of the Great Khali. My favorite Great Khali moment was the commercial advertising Raw starting at 8, where he was going to give Vince McMahon a prostate exam.
Yeah, good old times. Good old times indeed there. He also says you guys are great podcasters. Thank you so much indeed. He says he loves the wrestling podcast. Thank you so much. And make sure to subscribe to Tom as well on his channel. I will put the link in the description after the end of this video as well. We're coming down to our last couple of questions now. Dan Williams UK says Brock versus Edge I feel will be a great match. While they are both there, I'm hoping they put on a few more marquee matches on for Clash of the Castle. Feels a bit lackluster at the moment, although we've still got a bit of time really for the Clash of the Castle to take shape now. Obviously, we've got SummerSlam to focus on right now. But what about that Brock versus Edge match?
We've got more than a month for it to come together. I wouldn't worry about it too much at the moment. I wouldn't like to see Brock versus Edge because I don't want to see anyone with a history of neck injuries working with Mr. German Suplex.
That's very true. I'd hate to see him take a number of bumps. That would be quite awful to see. I'm going to get Bama Dame's comment up on my Twitter in a couple of seconds. But also, Great Khali versus John Cena, One Night Stand 2007. That is his personal favourite match. So anything...
go back through with Great Khali and everything involved there, I think of his personal history, and the things that really stand out aren't really moments that involve wrestling. There's everything that happened in the Royal Rumble, for example, with Beth Phoenix. That's just an awkward moment for everyone involved, but it sticks out in my head. And then, of course, there's the Punjabi prison match, where he wasn't even involved in the match. It was a Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal match. He just decided, this is a perfect time for me to come down, help Jinder Mahal, and then just take a nap for the next 5 years, I think it's been. We just haven't seen him since. Great Khali, for me, is one of those who just, nothing he did really stood out for any good reasons.
There you go. There you go. But like you say, there is many different little moments that Great Khali had, which did stand out there. But I've got Bamado's question ready for us. And I did promise I'd ask it for you here. What do you want to see happen most under Stephanie, Triple H, and Nick Khan's era of WWE? So we spoke about things that could happen, but what do you want to see happen most under them?
AJ Styles holding the WWE Championship, feuding with Roman Reigns, and more versus Seth.
I would love to see that as well. AJ Styles deserves one more run at the top before he hangs up the boots, in my opinion. So I totally agree with that. I think a move to SmackDown is very crucial for AJ in the near future. Patrick also says that he would love to see Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley for the United States Championship. Same argument with all of that would be really, really good. Thank you, everyone, so much for your questions. Tom, before we close up the stream, I want to ask you 2 more personal questions before we close up. But I'd like to say to everyone to please like the video, share with a friend as well, subscribe to SCW if you haven't already, and subscribe to Tom Colohue. He is awesome at everything he does. As you can see, it's here for you, here and now. And he does this on spoiler warnings twice a week, does SmackDown watch-alongs, and as well does pay-per-view watch-alongs. But I want to say, is there anything we've not spoken about today about SummerSlam that you think should be a topic that we should be looking at to talk about before going in this Saturday?
I think if there was one thing we were going to mention when it comes to SummerSlam, it would be the future of the Street Profits after their match with the Usos. And that is definitely something we should be talking about at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, I've given my predictions already. Obviously, I like the idea of rising above hate. You know, everyone's said about they're going to break up and all the rest of it. You have got time between now and the draft to do a storyline between the two if they do break up. But I feel that this would be a good placement for them to win the championships and do that breakup storyline a couple of months down the line. What do you think is most likely with this?
I think it's most likely that we see the breakup at SummerSlam. But I do like the idea of having them do it further down the line, for example, at the draft. The plan, to my knowledge, was for a breakup. We'll see if that sticks around.
Absolutely. And Jeff Jarrett guitar does seem quite likely as well, I would imagine. So
Jeff Jarrett's a pure red herring in that match.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all, does it? But yeah, Thomas here, same person. I don't see AJ going into SmackDown if Heyman is there. I think it's a fair comment.
It's a very fair comment, yes.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Patrick, as well. We're glad you've been a part of this and glad that you love it. We'll be doing more live streams very, very soon. Make sure to subscribe to Tom Colohue as well. But just before we go, you said before when we were chatting that you'd like to talk about content creation as well. And I want to give you a bit of a platform if there's anything that you would like to discuss on that topic while you're here.
I've spent a lot of time working on the content creation. I'm more than happy to do that. And lately I've been working with a few different content creators, looking at my stats, looking at their stats with screen sharing and the like in a meeting such as this one we're doing here, just privately. And working out the different things that work. I know there's quite a lot of content creators that come to your channel, and I've seen so many names in here, and you have a really, really good connection with a lot of those people. When it comes to the success that I've had recently, the luck in many ways as well. But to be blunt, recently I've been able to manage a show with more than 170 viewers live at once. That's my most successful so far. I've had 3 shows and more than 100. But they were all in the last month or so. Things have started to snowball myself. When it comes to content creation, there are a few tips I want to try and share, just basically sharing my experience with any content creators out there. There's a lot which comes down to really simple naming conventions. Always check out what videos are feeding into yours. I get a lot of traffic from Wrestle Talk, for example, that you've mentioned Wrestle Talk a few times there, just because of certain different titles and such. I highly recommend the vidIQ plugin. It is a brilliant tool and a brilliant resource to check out. But as much as anything, I really do hope we see more content creators like yourself, Steve, who connect, who help out, who are so supportive in this community. I want to see people like yourself grow, and I've really been happy. I've been watching out of the corner of my eye here, the viewership and the numbers and so on and so forth. It's great to see you doing well. And at some point, if I do have further tips and the like, and I'm sure if you have further tips as well, it's important that we as content creators are sharing as much as possible, because our success could be shared as much as anything else just by getting the names out there, picking our times. Even now, when it comes to live streams, we have the option to direct live streams into other live streams afterwards. And YouTube are really starting to work on different ways to filter shows from one side to the next. So I do encourage content creators to reach out to me. We can have a look at your stats, have a look in comparison to my stats, say what works for me, what could work for you, what might not work for you, and so on and so forth. Because simple things such as saying SummerSlam news rather than WWE SummerSlam 2022 news could be hamstringing people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, when you look at it, it's so key with titles of videos, and obviously with working on the algorithm as well is a very key component of this. Trying to work out a time of when you know your audience is watching your videos. If you try and connect to when you know the audience might be around, that's a good time to put your video out. For example, you've got a very consistent time schedule. For example, your videos, you go exactly Monday and Friday, 10 p.m. UK, 5 p.m. Eastern. You know that's it. He's going to be there each and every time. Go and check it out. You can go and do that. Like you said as well, with algorithms, working out with YouTube and stuff like that, it's very interesting with Key, because sometimes I will notice with my own videos, I'll think this one will do well. I'm confident with this video, completely tanks. But then I'll do another video and I go, I'm not sure about this one. I did a Ring of Honor video last year. I had no clue how it would go. Did 17,000 views, and I still to this day don't know why.
At some point, I'd love to break it down for you and try and work that out with you. That would be a great fun exercise, I feel, to maybe work out what that is, because if we can harness that, you're unstoppable.
That's the thing. It's to try and find that idea. The only thing I've put at the time was it was Ring of Honor, but usually it was a different time to what I'd usually set and everything. It all broke a lot of the rules, but it seemed to work. But then you do it with other videos after, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always connect. So
sometimes it is pure luck.
It can be just pure luck. But yeah, that's pretty much a lot of what we've got here. Ed, thank you so much for your kind words in the chat. I'm not going to put up on the screen because I want to remain as modest as possible, but I do appreciate that. But also, it does go on to say, help each other out. Don't try to outdo other streamers. Absolutely. We're all in this together. That's pretty much it. We all could help each other all break through. That's what it is. End of the day, it's as simple as that. You know, that's what it comes down to. And A to the K Wrestling Show, great to see you guys in the chat as well. This is great stuff. Thank you so much. Hope you're both doing well as well. I love their show when it comes out. Usually drops around this time of the week as well, so make sure to go and subscribe to their channel as well. And Sun Pro Wrestling, quality over quantity is my honest recommendation, Steve and Tom, to close the stream. Absolutely, we could not agree with that more. But Tom, just before we go off, I'd love you just to plug yourself one more time for the channel, for everyone that's watching.
Sure, I'm happy to plug myself. Obviously, you can find me on Twitter at Colohue, that is Colohue, much like the spelling of my name just down here. You can also find me on YouTube and on Twitch if you're more of a Twitch viewer. The YouTube channel just broke 1,300 subscribers, and to say we're moving at pace is a bit of an understatement. We are catching up to some of the big names a little quicker than I expected, and more importantly, we're having a great time doing it. I pride myself on being as well-informed a chat as possible. It's not just down to me. We source all of our information that the chat brings in. We're big on stats. And also, we are not fans of clickbait or hyperbole. A lot of what we do is just take the news that's out there and put it into actual understandable context.
It's a brilliant show. Really highly recommend it to everybody. And like I say, Tom, it's a very good Q&A format you do, like we're doing here. Answer everybody's questions as they come through. Obviously, spoiler warning, you have a bit of the inside gossip of what you bring to the table each and every time. Without giving anything away, I wouldn't want to take it here and now. But is there a couple of things that are special lined up that you know already for tomorrow's show?
There is indeed. There is more talk about the Triple H stepping up. There is more talk about SummerSlam. And there is a little bit more than I've given away here as regards Seth and Matt Riddle.
There we go. So look at that. Fantastic. And plenty of reasons to go and tune in to that show, Spoiler Warning, tomorrow. And that'll be followed with the SmackDown live watch-along party as well, when that's live and going on at 1 a.m. for the UK.
1 a.m. for the UK, yeah.
Absolutely. Good. Bring on the sugar drinks. That's all I can say for that. But fantastic, Tom. Thank you so much for being on. And just to say, everybody, if you've enjoyed this video, then please do like it. As I say, it goes a long way, helps with the algorithms on YouTube. Share it with a friend as well. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. And drop a comment afterwards. If you're watching on delay as well, drop a comment. Any question. I like to interact with anybody that gets involved. As I say, it always helps the channel, but also it gets me to interact with you as well. I do enjoy doing that. So I recommend on any video you watch with SCW, drop a comment afterwards. I'm happy to have a chat. a Q&A, whatever you want to do. We can talk about anything. And like I say, I will drop a link as well to Tom's channels in the description straight after this video. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy SummerSlam. It's been the SummerSlam Q&A with a bit of everything as well. You can check out my SummerSlam prediction stream that's on the channel for you right now as well. Myself and Jonesy have given our predictions for the show. And yeah, enjoy SummerSlam, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you very soon here on SCW. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.